is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Chief Constable of Hampshire has rejected claims his force is anti-white after angry criticism of his officer's arrest of a dying man.
Do we have a two-tier type policing system? I would refute that. I would say absolutely not. I see officers day in, day out on the grounds serving without fear or favour all our communities.
Alexis Boone says the officers involved in the arrest of Henry Novak have been taken off frontline policing duties. The student was handcuffed as he told police he'd been stabbed, his killer having claimed Novak had racially abused him. Earlier, Nigel Farage insisted the police are told to treat different ethnic groups in different ways at a rowdy Prime Minister's questions.
If the public lose trust in being treated fairly by the police, can he take some action, end this divisive practice of two-tier policing?
Sir Keir Starmer condemned the Reform leader's comments.
The grieving family have asked us not to respond in the way that the leader of Reform has responded. They've asked us not to. They have lost their son. His response has been to appeal for rage. Rage.
Their exchange came after last night's disorder in Southampton that injured 11 police officers. Labour MP for Southampton Test, Satvir Kaur, has told Andrew she has mixed emotions a day on from the trouble in her town.
It was both heartbreaking to hear the stories from local residents, but also really heartwarming to hear of our community coming together. We had an incredible clean-up operation early this morning, and since the community have been coming together and uniting against this.
An investigation starting after 3 members of the Royal Navy died in a helicopter crash in Devon. The Merlin craft came down during training near Oakhampton early this morning. Andy Ballantyne has more.
The MOD said the families of the service personnel killed in the incident have been informed. Defence Secretary John Healey said he was devastated, and the 3 deaths of personnel who served with excellence and will be much missed.
A YouTuber has been jailed for at least 31 years for murdering his pregnant girlfriend after trying to concoct a fake alibi online.
Hello to all on this glorious Sunday evening. So I just thought, why not? I'm going to do a live stream. Because this streaming software is kind of up the left, it means I can't check the live chat, which is a real shame.
That's 36-year-old Stephen McCullough claiming to be live streaming in 2022. Instead, at the time, he was making his way to killing 32-year-old Natalie McNally at her home in Lurgan, County Armagh. The Israeli Prime Minister has told an American news network he always finds a way to work out his differences with Donald Trump. The US President admitted he'd called Benjamin Netanyahu crazy over fighting in Lebanon. Speaking to CNBC, Mr. Netanyahu was asked about claims Iran has agreed not to have a nuclear weapon.
I think it's a precondition, but you have to make sure that they actually don't do it because they're always lying, they always cheat, and therefore you have to have a way to get out the nuclear material and to dismantle the infrastructure that they have.
Vladimir Putin's ambassador to London has been summoned to the Foreign Office for a dressing down. It's after a Russian drone struck a building in Romania. Government advisers say roads in built-up areas in England should have a default speed limit of 20 miles an hour. A group of MPs heard that in Oxfordshire, road deaths and serious injuries fell nearly a fifth when it brought in scores of 20 limits. A new theme park's been given a name as the Chancellor confirms the government's more than doubled its investment to £1.3 billion. Universal United Kingdom Resort is being built off the M1 in Bedfordshire with Comcast NBC Universal. Jack Silkstone is a theme park enthusiast. He's now waiting to discover the theme.
We can hope for a Jurassic World area, maybe a Back to the Future, and Harry Potter's the big one, a classic British theme. That's what everyone's hoping for.
In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 41 at 10,332. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.16. LBC weather. More blustery showers tonight with some clear spells developing in the east. Lows of 9 to 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10 tonight. It's 5 minutes past 7. I want to return to the subject of the Southampton protests, which were going on last night. We covered them on the programme last night. We had a report from our reporter there, Emma Corr. But they did turn quite violent, and the scenes of debris and broken glass on the streets at the site of that protest today looked pretty awful. 11 police officers were injured, 1 police dog, and only 2 people were arrested. Now, it's quite clear, because Tommy Robinson spoke at this event, the artist formerly known as Stephen Yaxley Lennon, that is his real name. He was whipping up the crowd. Absolutely disgraceful. Somebody's already sent a text in saying, this is from Martin, saying, I think Robinson and Farage should be arrested for inciting violence. It's criminal what they're doing. Well, I wasn't there. I didn't hear what Tommy Robinson said, but it clearly wouldn't have been to calm everyone down. I think we can probably all agree on that. What I think is an absolute disgrace is for any mainstream party leader or senior member of a political party, when asked to condemn violence at this kind of protest, doesn't. Now, over the last few years, many of you have accused me of giving Nigel Farage a bit of a free ride. Well, I'm not going to tonight, because I think it is an absolute disgrace that the leader of the party that could form the next government has failed to condemn the violence that took place in Southampton last night. He can say all he likes about two-tier policing and all the rest of it, and there is a place for that debate. It is not now, when the family of Henry Novak, the student that was murdered, when the family have asked for politicians not to use this as a political football. I think it is a disgrace that Nigel Farage has made some of the comments that he's made. They're wrapped in among other perfectly okay comments. But I think it's quite clear the direction of travel here. I haven't heard any condemnation from anybody else from his party. Why is that? But my main question tonight is, how can we sort of stop these protests happening again? Because, I mean, I don't know whether anything's going to happen in Southampton tonight. I hope the police are well prepared for a repeat. I hope it doesn't happen. But what needs to be done to prevent large-scale unrest breaking out around the country, as it did after the Southport murders 2 summers ago? And of course, Nigel Farage played a big part in that, with some of the initial comments that he made following the brutal murder of those 3 poor little children. And he was proved to be wrong in some of the things that he asserted in that. So the lesson here is that politicians should not make comments before they know all the facts. Well, let's go through some of the events of the day, what different politicians have been saying. Aggie Chambray, our deputy political editor, is here. Aggie.
Well, Iain, there was an extremely tense Prime Minister's questions earlier today. I think there was an expectation from some on the Labour benches that Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, would ask several questions about this, but instead she didn't. Keir Starmer did make this comment, though, when responding to the traditional opening question in PMQs.
No matter the pain we feel, there is no justification for more violence and disorder. Yeah. The attacks directed towards police officers in Southampton last night were disgraceful and completely unacceptable. Yeah. This is a time for serious work, not rage. Yeah. And let me be clear, we will ensure anyone found engaging in disorder meets the full force of the law, as we have done before.
So Kemi Badenoch's questions about welfare, but later on in the session of Prime Minister's questions, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage was invited to ask a question to Keir Starmer, and he reflected on those scenes on the South Coast last night.
Apart from the upset and the anger at the circumstances of his death, the anger that you saw spilling out in Southampton last night, and which is in danger.
Condemn the violence.
Which is in danger of getting considerably worse. Because if the public lose trust.
Condemn it.
if the public lose trust in being treated fairly by the police.
Iain, I've spoken to MPs about that question, about that moment in the Commons. One Liberal Democrat MP who was sat literally behind Nigel Farage during that question said that the Commons felt like a new low, lots of people shouting, condemn the violence, which you could, of course, hear, and saying that it was extremely tense during that moment. On condemning the violence or not condemning the violence from last night, Zia Youssef, a senior Reform UK figure, did say this morning when he was on the morning round, of course we condemn all forms of violence in that way. That goes without saying. But I've spoken to other people.
It doesn't go without saying, though. That's the problem.
Well, I've also spoken to other people in Reform UK who say that the party has condemned the violence and Nigel leads the party, thus effectively Nigel Farage has condemned the violence. And their point is nobody has asked Nigel Farage whether or not he condemns the violence or not. But listening to that clip from the House of Commons...
Is that really what they're saying?
Prime Minister's questions. I think that is the argument that they're making, that if anyone asks if he condemns the violence, he would say yes. But of course he was, and it's difficult in the House of Commons. We can hear everything because there are microphones everywhere. But I think MPs always say if you're there, you sometimes can't pick up everyone saying, it probably sounds like I'm giving him too much the benefit of the doubt, but I suppose
and that's what I'm normally accused of, so you can take over that mantle today.
Well, but that is what Reform UK is saying, but other people and MPs saying, he was given that opportunity very much today. And in fact, he's done another interview tonight where he has said that the violent disorder in Southampton is just the beginning, saying the division will get far worse because large numbers of young white males think the police are prejudiced against them.
But that is tantamount to whipping it up, isn't it? I mean, the quote the bit that we played there when he effectively said that this will get worse. Well, it almost sounds as if he wants it to.
Well, those are some of the accusations that are being levelled against him. I mean, he has used that expression, pure cold rage, which has elicited rage from many on the Labour benches and the Liberal Democrat benches, on the Conservative benches too. But the argument, again, Reform UK are making is that cold rage means a controlled rage. And Nigel Farage indeed said in that interview he did tonight that it's hard to be a human being and not be angry watching it, but I suggested that rage was put in a cold way, not a hot way. But Iain, I really can't tell you how much anger there is in the House of Commons about Nigel Farage's response today, Nigel Farage's response yesterday. I mean, one MP said to me, exploiting a grieving family's tragedy to inflame tensions is beneath any serious political leader. And also during Prime Minister's questions, we heard from one of Southampton's two local MPs, Darren Paffy, who asked this question about that violence.
Does the Prime Minister agree with me and my constituency neighbour in Southampton Test, Satvir Kaur, that the violence we saw whipped up on the streets of Southampton last night, the criminal damage to innocent people's homes, the injuries to 11 police officers, are the total opposite of what Henry's own family clearly and powerfully called for?
Can I thank him for his question and thank him for the discussion that we had this morning about the impact in Southampton, and thank him for the work that he has done along with his fellow MP and, if I may, the Honourable Member for Thurrock, who's been dealing with Henry's family for some time. The attacks directed towards police officers last night were disgraceful and completely unacceptable. There is no justification for further disorder.
And Iain, more condemnation for Nigel Farage's response tonight from the Education Secretary, who was just speaking to our colleague Andrew Marr, Bridget Phillipson, saying when you see Nigel Farage responding in a way that he refuses to condemn the violence, he almost seems to enjoy it. It's really disturbing. So really strong language on all sides tonight.
Aggie, thank you very much. Now, let's talk to Professor James Treadwell, who is Professor of Criminology at Staffordshire University, who's the author of the book, The Rise of the Right, English Nationalism and the Transformation of Working Class Politics. James, thank you for talking to us on LBC this evening. These were fairly incendiary remarks from Nigel Farage in the House of Commons today, saying, well, this is only going to get worse. Now, he will say, well, I'm not whipping people up. I'm just stating my opinion of what might happen now. Is there a playbook going on here?
I think to some extent there is. And if I'm completely honest, I don't think Nigel Farage cares about the condemnation that he faces from the media and from politicians in Westminster whatsoever. Because I think what he is doing is he's talking into a particular demographic that he wants to engage in politics and have vote for him. And while we sometimes miss this, there is a huge amount of anger, I think, out there, particularly at this growing perception of differential treatment and two-tier policing, which he is now using and employing as a way of solidifying the support for reform. And
which in a way, in a way is fine. And I think there is a point to argue here, but you don't do it when the family have specifically requested that politicians don't make this a political football. When the report comes out, fine, have the debate.
I have some problems with that because, yes, the family have requested, and I wouldn't want to disrespect the family, but in all manner of justice, the justice process is not about families, it's about the state, and it is inherently political from the outset anyway. So I always have problems when people sort of say, don't politicise any aspect of criminal justice. I think there is a problem, though, and there is a problem in this, in that, and I've always taken one line, which is very much like yours, Ian, and I agree with you. You condemn all violence. You condemn violence, whichever side it comes from, when it's public disorder, because if you're asking people to obey the rule of law, you can't be seen to side with the lawbreaker. I think the problem with that is there's a growing perception amongst many members of the British public that standard is differential. We see that related to Manchester Airport. We see that with protests in London from Palestine Action, with groups like Extinction Rebellion. We see that even with Black Lives Matter and Colston Must Fall protests and so on, where not all politicians, including many of those who are now criticising Farage, have necessarily condemned criminal behaviour. And that is problematic. It creates a situation in which, there's the perception that the justice system treats groups differently. I also think we need to have a debate about where that perception comes from, because a lot of that perception has long been there. If we look back to the very origins of groups like the English Defence League, that perception was there, that there were differences in treatment that came about because of political sensitivities. But also, to be fair, if we go back and look at some of the things that were concerning the English Defence League, like grooming gangs, again, something that Nigel Farage has made a lot of capital from, those things were clearly happening, and progressive Liberals were not necessarily keen to have them debated and discussed. So Nigel Farage now has an almost perfect defence in that he can say, well, you would say, I can't talk about these things because you've long been doing it.
Well, I don't think anybody's suggesting that people can't talk about these issues. I can remember when the grooming gang scandal first came up, I got a lot of abuse because I specifically said that the perpetrators were clearly from the British Pakistani community, which a lot of sort of Liberals, as you described them, wouldn't acknowledge. But here,
that lack of acknowledgement.
Yeah, but here, when you have a party leader, a potential prime minister, not feeling able to condemn violence, I think that crosses a line. Nobody would have minded if there had been a silent vigil last night in that same place where people just wanted to express solidarity with the family and all the rest of it. Nobody would object to that. But these thugs, they went there not because they were angry about this. They just wanted a ruck, and they were being whipped up by Tommy Robinson.
If we are going to use that analogy, though, and we're going to say it's thugs being whipped up who just wanted a ruck, is it not important that exactly the same thing happens with all forms of violence, wherever they're encountered? And the problem is, I think, that there's a very clear perception from a large proportion of the public that simply isn't the case, that some forms of thuggery are allowed and tolerated or even actively appeased, and that other forms of criminal behaviour are roundly condemned. And I think, particularly for Nigel Farage, and this is partly playing to that perception out there in the general public. And you said it earlier on, post Southport, I think things very much changed in some ways with a large bulk of the public who felt that in coming out and suggesting that essentially the protesters were far right, Keir Starmer had very much gone a different way to that had been taken with all sorts of other protests. And so I agree with you that universal condemnation for violence is important, but we often haven't necessarily seen that. We didn't see that when the BBC, for example, was describing, largely peaceful Black Lives Riots matter disorders or Coulston Must Fall disorders. And that has created this perception of two-tier justice. And I think that now that's there, it's going to be very, very difficult to take the line that, this is, I take the line that the lack of condemnation is a problem. But I think it's going to be very, very difficult to convince a large swathe of the electorate that this started today with Nigel Farage.
OK, thank you very much indeed. That's Professor James Treadwell from Staffordshire University. We'll come to your calls in just a second. It's 7:21 here on LBC.
LBC. Here's a tale of two commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with Your Parking Space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With Your Parking Space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the code GET10 for £10 off your first booking. Download the Your Parking Space app today.
Feel that? That little buzz of excitement? That's the weekly flutter. With chances to win up to £10,000, enter British Heart Foundation's lottery for a thrill with goodwill behind it. Because when you play, it helps fund life-saving research. So go on, keep playing, keep winning, keep us beating. Search BHF Lottery. Gamble responsibly. Over 18s only. T's and C's apply. Please see our website for more details. British Heart Foundation is a registered charity.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty, IG is the investment platform that backs you. Forget the dubious tips from that guy down the pub. Get real-time insights, analysis and tools. No more fat cat brokers clawing your gains. Pay zero commission on your investments. Switch to a platform trusted by British investors for over 50 years. IG. Trade, invest, progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
23 minutes past 7. It comes to something when I appear the more left wing of a presenter and a professor, doesn't it? Sort of, I think Matthew Goodwin has got a rival there in some ways. Right. Well, let's get your views on this, because, look, there are always two sides to a story. Sometimes there are four sides to a story. And I don't pretend that my view on this is right, but I have been quite shocked that Nigel Farage hasn't condemned the violence. And look, I'm sure there were some local people there at those protests last night, but I would almost guarantee that many of them were the usual rent-a-mob thugs that Tommy Robinson controls or leads, however you want to put it. Let's go to Philip in Sandhurst. Philip, what would you like to say?
Good evening, Ian. Thank you for taking my call. I find it surprising that you are surprised that Mr. Farage hasn't condoned the what happened on the streets of Southampton last night. Mr. Farage will test the boundaries at every opportunity that comes to his fruition. He's testing the boundaries again. We will all be shocked and stunned and appalled by his actions, and it will help him to show that what he's done previously wasn't quite as shocking. It's a well-worn tread of persons like Mr. Farage. The professor who you had, I agree with you. I was quite surprised that he made you look left-wing. He was, and I mean that in the kindest way, Ian. There's a lot of whataboutery. the riots in Southport after the tragic happenings there and the unrest on the streets of Southampton have nothing to do with the murder of the young lad in Southampton. Nigel Farage cares not one jot about that young man or about what the other members of Parliament think of him. And
well, I think you're right on the second. I think it's a bit cruel to assert that he doesn't care that this young man was murdered. I'm pretty sure I read that he had actually spoken to the father of Henry Novak. So if he picked up the phone to him, I think it's quite reasonable to assume that he cared enough to pick up the phone, and that can't have been an easy conversation. But I think he's clearly taken the wrong conclusions from that phone call.
Unless, Ian, you take into consideration that he may have picked up the phone in order to be able to say in the future, I do care because I picked up the phone. There is that scenario. But I take your point, and perhaps I was a little bit strong. But I would say that the people on the streets of Southampton kicking the police shields and throwing bricks and stones, they don't care a jot about the young lad who was murdered. They are there for a specific point. I believe myself, quite sincerely, that Nigel Farage doesn't want to take power until Britain is burning and he has nothing to basically answer to.
Well, very strong words, Philip. Thank you very much. Tim says, Ian, wake up. This is a distraction from Farage over his £5 million dodgy gift. Well, I suppose from the point of view that we're talking about that now and not that £5 million. I mean, you can draw that conclusion. I think it's possibly a little bit overdone, but everyone's entitled to their point of view. Robert's in Dulwich. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Ian. Well, I've got to admit that my sentiments were perfectly expressed by Nigel Farage. I felt a rage. First, it was a shock when I saw the video. I actually didn't believe it, what I was watching. I didn't believe he died. And a friend of mine said, look, have you seen this? And then you listen to it again, and you actually hear the policewoman say his pupils aren't dilating. So at that point, you just realise you've watched someone die, and the police are all standing around, and you're thinking, this can't be happening in England.
Yeah.
And so I did have a rage, because I have 3 children, and pay tax and do all the things that society asks of me. And I am enraged. But I'm not going to go out and do anything crazy. So in that sense, my rage is a cold one. But I want...
Just before you go on that particular point, I remember saying to someone in the newsroom yesterday, I said, this thing about cold, hard rage, if he meant it in the way that he says he meant it, I said, I don't have a great problem with that, because I think everyone that sees that this boy was allowed to die without any intervention from various police officers who were standing around. I mean, I can understand that expression. So I'm not having a go at him for that, but I am having a go at him for failing to condemn the violence and indeed appearing, and I use that word, appearing to predict that it's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, he's right. He's right. You can't keep doing this to people. The authorities...
Come on, this was one very tragic incident. You say keep doing this to people.
It's not one incident.
Well, name another one where the police have effectively let an 18-year-old die.
Ian, no. Well, what we're talking about, actually, if you generalise it, is institutions that seem to be captured with an idea that you can equalise outcomes rather than actually just treat people equally. Lady Justice, right, historically, holds a sword in one hand and the balances in the other hand with a blindfold, right? You've got a police manual that tells police officers we need to try and equalise it so that we don't have so many ethnic minorities overrepresented in the crime statistics. Valero Calacane, that guy was let out, complete stutter, telling his doctors he was going to kill people. They let him out because they were worried that black people were overrepresented in the stats. It's endless. The Ariana Grande massacre, that bomb in the concert in Manchester, 22 people died, mostly children. And the security guard said, I was worried about searching their life because I was worried about being called racist. All Nigel Farage is saying, all he is saying, and I'm hearing more upset about his words from people than actually what they're saying about this boy. All he's saying is we've got to get rid of these pernicious ideas.
Yeah, and Kemi Badenoch is saying roughly the same thing, but in a measured way, a calm way that isn't seen as inciting violence in any way.
Ian, if you believe that Nigel Farage is inciting violence, then you haven't spoken and dealt with a man for 10 years, and you know he's not that man.
Well, you know that I know him. You know that I've defended him in many ways, even though I don't like a lot of the things that his party says or does. But I can't defend him over this because you have to judge. Look, Robert, if you keep interrupting me, we'll finish the call because that's you phone the station often enough to know how debates work. So let me just finish what I'm about to say.
Okay.
He knows that words matter. Words have consequences. And, OK, we can all say things from time to time that get misconstrued or misinterpreted or whatever. But when you say that, or you predict that this is going to get worse, that is tantamount to inciting it to get worse, I'm afraid. And I can't defend that.
Okay, can I explain to you why that isn't the case, if I may? It's an argument, an old school philosophical argument. If you have a system that's treating people differently, you will always, in the end up with some sort of physical disturbance. Because people, the whole point of a civil pact, the whole point of elections is to settle disputes, have votes, make the law, and everyone has to be treated equally under the law. And if you don't treat people equally under the law, you will have civil unrest. It doesn't happen straight away, but it will happen over time. We have got to stop. The police have got to burn those books that sounds dodgy. You've got to get rid of this idea that different groups and minorities have to be treated differently. That is the message that Farage is saying.
And I agree with that message, but there are ways, I come back to the Kemi Badenoch point, that's what she was saying, but she said it in a way that normal, rational people can understand, whereas what Nigel Farage did was appeal to the basest of human nature, I'm afraid. And that is not the politics I want to see. Robert, thank you very much indeed. More of your calls in a moment, and we'll get more on the tragic deaths of these 3 Royal Navy personnel who've died in a helicopter crash in Devon. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 7:32. News headlines with Matt Hewitt.
Hampshire's Chief Constable says he doesn't believe policing in the UK is anti-white after his officers' response to the murder of Henry Novak. Alexis Boone says footage of his officers ignoring the pleas of the dying student was traumatic and tragic, but he echoed evidence from a pathologist that those responding could not have saved his life. The head of the Royal Navy says it's come as a huge shock that 3 of his personnel were killed in a helicopter training exercise this morning. The scene of the crash is close to Oakhampton Battle Camp, a military facility in Devon that's been used for training Merlin helicopter crews. And a YouTuber has been jailed for at least 31 years for murdering his pregnant girlfriend after trying to concoct a fake alibi online. 36-year-old Stephen McCullough claimed to be live streaming but was making his way to kill Natalie McNally at her home in County Armagh. LBC weather, more blustery showers tonight with some clear spells developing in the east. Lows of 9 to 14 degrees.
This is LBC.
Is your cat drinking enough? Discover Purina One Hydrolife and help support their daily hydration with a taste they'll enjoy. Purina One Hydrolife. Make it easy.
So let me get this straight. You pack the sleeping bags?
Yes.
Mosquito repellent?
Yes.
And flipping badminton rackets?
Obviously.
But somehow, the tent is still at home.
Well, technically the garage. Look, on the ring cameras, you can see it there.
Oh.
And there. Hey, where are you going?
To a hotel, Neil. Come on, kids. Yay! Always know what's happening at home with Ring. Available now at ring.com and selected retailers.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
When you're smiling, don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
3 members of the Royal Navy have died in a helicopter crash in Devon. The Merlin Mk4 helicopter came down in a field at just before 4 a.m. this morning, and we'll get more on this from our Southwest correspondent, Andy Ballantyne. Andy, a horrible, horrible tragedy. What happened?
Well, Ian, by daybreak, spotted from a bridge over the A30, a helicopter lying in a field on its side, a massive debris area, huge scorch marks in the earth. And even from approximately a mile away, you could see the front and middle of the aircraft have been completely destroyed, leaving just the tail. An eyewitness told me that the whole house shook as the helicopter passed low overhead. Perhaps nothing unusual in that. It's what they do for training exercises. But what she noticed was the thud afterwards, and that's when emergency services were called to this spot. It would be about mid-afternoon, though, when we heard officially that 3 lives had been lost. Among the tributes, one from the Princess of Wales, who is Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm. In a personally signed message posted on social media, she said, "William and I hold their families and friends in our hearts at this very difficult time. It's understood that Kate and the Prince of Wales will contact the families of those who died in the coming days, as will King Charles." Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer described the incident as utterly tragic. Now, as I say, it's not unusual for Merlin helicopters to be flying over here. They're used regularly in exercises at nearby Oakhampton Camp on the edge of Dartmoor. Most have a crew of 4 and can carry up to 24 troops. And this is almost a midway point between the Royal Navy's air bases at Culdrose in Cornwall and Yeovilton in Somerset, where it's thought the aircraft was based. Ian, an investigation to find out how this training exercise went so horribly wrong is underway.
Thank you very much, Andy. That's Andy Ballantyne, LBC's South West of England correspondent. Right, let's go back to your calls. Look, I recognise that Nigel Farage provokes strong reactions on both sides. His supporters idolise him. His opponents think he is essentially the devil incarnate. And I try to call things out as I see them on this. I think he's got it wrong. I think his language has been wrong. I'm not objecting to the cold, hard rage, because I think we all feel that about what happened to poor Henry Novak. And I accept that there should be a debate on so-called 2-tier policing. I think there is a lot of evidence that that is happening. But I think when you say something that can be interpreted as tolerating, condoning violent activities by thug protesters, I think you enter a whole new world there. Let's go to John in Leicester. Hello, John.
Hi, Ian. Nice to speak to you. I am with you on this one, Ian. I am a Reform member. I went along to the recent Unite the Kingdom march in London. You know, I like you hear, you see the two-tieredness running throughout our institutions, and that frustrates me massively. But when Nigel today just failed simply to condemn that violence, given Henry's father so, beautifully, spoke and asked there'd be no violence. For Nigel, I think that was a real misstep. And given this upcoming by-election in Makerfield, that will be just used as absolute ammunition. You can see Starmer just picking that up and running with it. And anyone on the fence thinking, shall I vote Reform, shall I not? They just think, do you know what? I just think that it's very unlike Nigel not to read the room. And I just think on this one, and to say that, there might be more violence, like you say, that is just not the tone. Given the climate that we're in and everything else, I just think he very unlike Nigel, but he that was just a banana skin. And
you're speaking as a Reform member. Does this shake your confidence in Reform?
It doesn't. It doesn't, because I believe they're our best, hope to deal with. I was an ex-Tory, and the Tories stop being Conservative, and that's why I'm a Reform member. But it is very, I say, Nigel, it's the first time I think I thought, I can't back. I'm not with you on that one, Nigel. And it's I say he just gives political opponents just all the ammunition, and Keir Starmer will just leap on that one and carry that one all the way to the bank, because that's the one thing he's all the while trying to stick on Reform and Nigel far right and trouble and all the rest of it. And it's the reason why Nigel Farage will not embrace Tommy Robinson, because he is just absolutely scared stiff as being labelled far right and trouble causing and all the rest of it. And he's gone in. I just think it was just not a wise thing to do.
When you see what Kemi Badenoch has said about this, well, she has said something vaguely similar to Farage, but has said it in a much more responsible way.
No, to be honest, Kemi's gained a lot of traction and a lot of admiration from me as an ex-Tory, and she chimes just right, and she's really found her feet in PMQs and all the rest of it, and she's shown real good leadership, and I'm very impressed with Kemi, to be honest.
But not impressed to do a reverse ferret?
Not as yet. It's whether the rest of the party is on board with where Kemi's at. There's Nick Timothy, Katie Lamb, Mel Strider, there's some good ones there, but it's whether the party as a whole is there and where it needs to be to do what I feel needs to be done, and that's where Reform have got their support from. But you never say never. But I don't know. It's very unlike Nigel, as I say, and I just think deep down, I wonder whether Richard Tice and Zia Youssef, whether they're just what they truly think of that. That comment, because, like I say, you are just giving his opponents all what they need, and I'll take that with two hands. So,
okay, John, thank you very much indeed. Rob is in Worcester. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
A couple of points. I'm a former police officer. I don't feel that this is an incident in which the police have acted with a racial intent. I think it's down to poor policing standards, the way that police recruitment has been watered down so much. They're not getting good police officers. And as a medic as well, I was appalled at the fact that the police have got no concept about how to assess somebody and identify that they may have a life-threatening condition and to treat it accordingly. And that's a big problem, I think.
Well, this is why I think everybody needs to calm down and wait for the official report here, because watching that video, which I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure whether that should have been released so everybody could see it. But anyway, it was, so we are where we are. But, I mean, there are all sorts of questions that arise from that. Now, I must admit, I would have always assumed that if someone was stabbed, that therefore there would be a lot of blood. So, I mean, I might have made the same conclusion that police officer did. But you would, as you say, you would think that a police officer would be trained to understand that not all stabbings result in huge pools of blood.
Yeah, the general public may well think that a stab wound would mean lots of blood. Police officers, I would hope, would know that a stab wound can be tiny. It can be hidden under the armpit or anywhere else. But the internal damage and the internal impact can be life-threatening, and they should go actually physically looking for it in the correct way, the same way that ambulance crew would. It's basic first aid, but it's good quality first aid, and every police officer should be able to do that, and that wasn't done from what I saw on the video.
But the accusation is that the police officers believed the perpetrator, who was a Sikh, because they had been told by their guidelines to sort of treat people from ethnic minorities in a more lenient way than white people. Now, if the guidelines really do say that, I would be the first to say that is an absolute disgrace. Everybody should be equal under the law. But we don't know that that's what happened, and we won't know that until we know the results of the inquiry.
No, you're right. The wording of those guidelines is atrocious. I was appalled by that. My concern is that a good police officer should go to the scene of an incident and they should not take anything for granted. They should identify what's going on by means of good questioning and making a judgment. If they see someone in the floor who may be injured, and the primary role of police is to protect life, always to protect life. So that's the priority. So they have to do that. And I do feel that officers these days don't really have the correct motivations for wanting to be police officers in terms of protecting life and property and upholding the King's peace.
Well, I can find nothing to disagree with there, Rob. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Let me tell you who's on question from 8 o'clock. We have Baroness Amanda Spielman, Conservative peer, former Chief Inspector of Ofsted. Max Wilkinson, Lib Dem Home Affairs spokesperson and MP for Cheltenham. Alison Hume, Labour MP for Scarborough and Whitby. And Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, businessman known as the Black Farmer. They'll be here to answer your questions. The lines are open for your questions right now. It's 7:45.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Why is Nigel Farage doing what he's doing, flagrantly ignoring the wishes of Henry Novak's parents? Is it all to do with the Makerfield by-election and getting the Reform candidate over the line?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
3 heroes, 1 mission to hijack snacks. Introducing new corn protein bites.
Wait, are we the heroes?
Of course we're the heroes. These snacks are high in protein and ready to eat.
Why are you doing the serious voice?
Yeah, why are you doing the serious voice? I was trying to make it cooler. Find new Corn Protein Bite snack bags in supermarkets nationwide. Corn, so tasty. Why choose the alternative?
Get iPhone 17 in the Vodafone Business Summer Sale. iPhone 17 is built for business with all-day battery life and the powerful A19 chip for fast, efficient performance. Experience it all on the best network for business and save £300. Hurry, offer ends the 22nd of July. Vodafone Business.
Businesses with up to 9 employees only. Based on iPhone 17 and 24-month unlimited airtime plan. Best network is awarded at the Mobile Industry Awards. Saving calculated over 36 months.
You think a football coach just teaches how to kick a ball?
Nah, a football coach gives you the skills to win in life.
I stay focused for 90 minutes. So a 60-minute exam is no sweat.
Job interviews don't scare me. I'm up against 11 players every week.
And I'm not just captaining a team. I'm prepping for when I'm running my own company.
A coach's influence goes beyond the pitch. That's why Chase Bank has funded over 6,000 grassroots coaching qualifications. Search Chase.
Feel that? That little buzz of excitement? That's the weekly flutter. With chances to win up to £10,000, enter British Heart Foundation's lottery for a thrill with goodwill behind it. Because when you play, it helps fund life-saving research. So go on, keep playing. Keep winning. Keep us beating. Search BHF Lottery. Gamble responsibly. Over 18s only. T's and C's apply. Please see our website for more details. British Heart Foundation is a registered charity.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:48 on LBC. Let's go straight back to your calls. Abdirahman is in Hanwell. Very good evening. What would you like to tell us?
Oh, hello, Mr. Iain Dale. I'm a very big fan of yours. And I think you should be standing one day.
That didn't work out very well last time, did it? So I'm not going to repeat the mistake.
Well, maybe
but very kind.
A new party. But what I was going to say, first and foremost, send my condolences to young Henry and his family. And as soon as Nigel Farage gave the code word to Tommy Robinson to come down, so Tommy Robinson came down to Southampton. It was known there should have been hundreds of police to outnumber them and arrest all of them. Every single person who threw a brick, threw a stone, injured those police officers on duty and a dog. It should have been preempted, and there should have been more resources. They should have been rounded up What do you think about that, Iain?
Well, I mean, it's very easy to say after the event, well, the police should have done this, the police should have done that. They didn't have enough officers there. I've got no idea whether that's true or not. But I do have to pick you up on one thing you said there, because I think it is very unfair on Nigel Farage to say he gave the word to Nigel Robinson, because one thing that Nigel Farage has been consistent on over the last 10, 15 years is his repeated condemnation of Tommy Robinson. He wants nothing to do with him. He won't have him in reform. So I think you're barking up the wrong tree there.
Okay, Iain, can I say one more thing? Iain, there should be CCTV. They should be still rounded up. Everybody should be rounded up and brought to justice.
Well, I agree with that. Anybody that has been seen to commit violent acts in Southampton last night should face justice. You're absolutely right on that. But whether there was CCTV there, if there was, I'm sure it'll be looked at. But I think it was done outside the place where Henry Novak was murdered. So I've got no idea whether there would be CCTV there. So we've got to be very careful. We've got to be careful of thinking we know all the facts when actually we don't. Thank you very much, though, Abdi Rahman. Let's go to Mary in Bromley. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Iain. Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
I was just going to say, I think, unfortunately, the protest, I think, is warranted, because I think at the end of the day, the police have really failed the public, really, I think, and public confidence. And ultimately, an innocent person has lost their life. It can happen to anyone, really.
Well, when you say the protest was warranted, I think if it was all local people who wanted to go and express their condolences, or even protest against what they think the police did or didn't do, fair enough. But there was too much violence there for this to be a warranted protest. And
so
from the
protest.
Sorry,
I'll let you finish.
Well, I was just going to say that when the footage that I've seen from that protest, admittedly, you only see bits in the news bulletins. It didn't look to me like these were all spontaneous people coming from the Southampton area to express their concern. It looked to me as if some of them were the usual suspects. You know exactly what I mean by that.
Absolutely, and I think ultimately there's a standard behaviour that we should expect from protests, and also you could travel from afar to protest. I've travelled from Norwich once to London for a protest. People do that. People do that. But I think ultimately, obviously, where violence comes in, it's not savoury. It's not acceptable. But at the same time, I can understand frustrations, and also on top of that, someone has died innocently, and they won't be getting their life back simply because someone has manipulated and misused, just their rights, unfortunately, in society. And it's ridiculous that the police officer didn't even bother was just so dismissive and didn't even bother to really just assess what's going on properly.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we've come to believe from the videos. I've got no reason to think that that's not true. Having seen the snippet of the video that we've been allowed to see, it would be quite interesting to see the whole episode from the moment the police arrived on the scene to the moment they left. I'm a great believer in you've got to go on the evidence, and here we've only got partial evidence. Mary, thank you very much. Kevin, I don't know if you've been listening to this hour, Kevin, but when you send a text like that says, sounds like you're trying to do a bit of damage limitation for Tory boy Nigel Farage. I mean, I've gone out of my way to condemn what he said today. The only thing I've said in his defence is that he is not a fan of Tommy Robinson. In fact, the very opposite. So if you think that's damage limitation, I was actually just stating a fact. And you say Tory boy Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage hasn't been a member of the Conservative Party for 35 years. So you need to get your facts right on that, Kevin, don't you? Michael's in Chelmsford. Hello, Michael.
Hi. Iain, would you just indulge me a little bit to ask you a question or two? I want to just to make my point. The first is it a matter of fact that women are generally tend to not be believed when they report cases to the police of abuse, rape especially, and that when women go to court, that cases of abuse against women rarely go to court at all. Is that a matter of fact?
I think it is a fact that a lot of these cases do not go to court when they probably should. I think the situation with women reporting rape or sexual abuse to police, I think that the police handle those cases much more sensitively than they would have done even 5 years ago. But I don't think they are there yet. I'm not quite sure what this has got to do with this situation.
I'll tell you in a bit. So the next point I would make is imagine a situation where a woman, a single woman now, basically lies that a man has abused her. And actually, she had stabbed the man. And the man has died. So she's committed murder, but she's lied that a man actually sexually abused her. Would we even think that it's okay for us to have this conversation about whether, in fact, the tables have turned and the injustice is against the men, not against the women, that all the facts we know about police injustice, women injustice against women, cases of women being abused not going to court, cases of women reporting to police not being believed, that all of a sudden all of those things are rubbish and they're non-existent, they're imaginary. What's in fact a problem is that men are being discriminated against. We're never going to do that, and rightly so. We're never going to have that conversation. I understand Nigel Farage is an opportunist. I understand him, trying to make the most of what's happened here. A very, very disingenuous individual. I understand when people will support him, many of them live in echo chambers, in online echo chambers, where the only thing they never hear about the historical injustices against black and brown people. They only hear about, what they want to hear or what's being propagated within the echo chambers that exist within. I understand that too. I don't want to, take issues with them. But when people who know better, including, I'm very sorry to say, the media, even give grounds to have this conversation about two-tier justice, to have this conversation about, we're going to forget every injustice that black and brown people suffer at the hands of police.
Well, nobody's suggesting that. Where are you getting this from? Nobody's suggesting that.
No, the mere idea, Ian, that there is two-tier justice in which white people are disadvantaged with the police. There is absolutely no evidence of that. While there is so many evidence of black people dying in the hands of police, brown people being suffering injustice in the hands of police, and everything that has been done, all the gains we've made over the years is to rectify that, is to equalize that. And for anyone to now think, even the police, policies that we're talking about to try and rectify that is what we're now rubbishing and making it sound like, in fact, it is to actually protect black and brown people and treat them better than police will. Meanwhile, the cases of young black men being constantly harassed by police, being stopped and searched, is still an issue in this country. So I feel like just giving oxygen to the mere mention of two-tier police in which white people are the victim.
Well, either you believe that every individual in this country, whatever their race, whatever their religion, whatever their skin colour, either you believe that everybody has a right to equal justice or you don't. And it appears, and I do. Well, good, because so do I. But it appears that there are documents circulating within the police from senior police officers saying that members of particular groups should be maybe treated slightly more leniently than others. Now, if that is true, and that's what hopefully this inquiry will... Hang on. If that is true, then I hope you and I can both agree that that is a serious situation which will need to be addressed. Now, I don't know if it's true, but it seems as though from what we heard from our police officer earlier that it is true.
No, for me, I don't believe it's true.
Okay,
if it's true, I agree with you 100%.
Well, fine. Well, let's part on that note of agreement, because we have reached the end of the hour. Michael, thank you very much indeed. Coming up in the next hour, I'm sure this is a subject that one or two of you will want to ask about on Cross Question. Our panel consists of Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, a businessman known as the Black Farmer, Alison Hume, Labour MP for Scarborough and Whitby, Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesperson and MP for Cheltenham, and Baroness Amanda Spielman, Conservative peer, who's a former Chief Inspector of the Education Regulator, Ofsted. So the number to call, 0345 6060 973. You can text us on 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Hampshire's chief constables denied policing in the UK is anti-white. It's after 18-year-old murder victim Henry Novak was handcuffed as he lay dying in December when his Sikh killer made a false allegation of racism. There were protests in Southampton last night after Nigel Farage said the reaction should be one of pure cold rage. James Treadwell, Professor of Criminology at Staffordshire University, told LBC he doesn't think the Reform UK leader cares about criticism from MPs.
He's talking into a particular demographic that he wants to engage in politics and have vote for him. We sometimes miss this. There is a huge amount of anger, I think, out there, particularly at this growing perception of differential treatment and two-tier policing.
3 people have died after a Royal Navy helicopter crashed in a field in Devon. It happened during a training exercise this morning. A YouTuber who faked a live stream as an alibi will serve at least 31 years behind bars for murdering his pregnant girlfriend. 36-year-old Stephen McCullough attacked Natalie McNally in County Armagh. And £1.3 billion of taxpayers' money has been confirmed for a new theme park in Bedfordshire. The construction of Universal United Kingdom resorts predicted to create 20,000 jobs. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 41 points at 10,332. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.16. LBC weather, more blustery showers tonight, some clear spells in the east, a low of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. On the panel with me tonight, to my left, we have Baroness Amanda Spielman, Conservative peer, former Chief Inspector of Ofsted. Next to her, Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesperson and MP for Cheltenham. To my right, Alison Hume, Labour MP for Scarborough and Whitby. And to her right, Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, businessman known as the Black Farmer. They are here to answer your questions. The number to call, 0345 6060 973. You can text us on 84850, and of course you can watch us on the LBC app, on Global Player and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's start off with our first question. It's from Joe in Brighton. Joe, hello, go ahead.
Hi, Ian. Good to speak to you again. It's been a while. Do you agree with me that Nigel Farage uses emotive language knowing he will provoke thugs and also acting in a way like a school bully, by the way he says it, knowing that certain people will go out there and do his bidding without him actually saying it?
Nice, dispassionate question from you, Joe. Alison?
You're having a little trouble hearing.
Did you not hear the question?
Yes, was it about the language?
Yeah, does Nigel Farage deliberately
used?
use language to provoke and inflame the right?
Yeah, I think he does. Ian, I was sitting in the House of Commons today at Prime Minister's Questions in my normal spot, and I had a very good view of Nigel Farage. And I have to say that I thought the Prime Minister, in his response to the dreadful murder of Henry Novak and the dignified response of the family, was spot on. And also Kemi Badenoch was brilliant too, pitch perfect. There was a real sense of the whole House uniting. Then Farage opens his mouth. I mean, it's
What
terrible.
did he say that you really objected to?
Well, the tone had been set that the family had asked that their son's death was not used to inflame, hatred. And Farage had a chance to sort of pay his respects, and he didn't. He just rode straight in and kept going. I mean, Steve Darling, who's a very mild-mannered man, he's there with his dog, he turned outrageous. People were really, really upset. The actual feeling in the chamber was one of, why are you doing this? We should all be uniting as MPs.
But the accusation, and Joe's sort of articulated that, the accusation is that he has done it to whip up a fury, as reflected maybe in the protests last night in Southampton. And he actually said, well, if things don't change, these protests will get worse.
Yeah, and isn't that inflammatory and dangerous? This man is, a politician that feeds off other people's fear, and saying that, it's great for the family to be dignified, but we all need to feel cold, hard rage is outrageous. And I'm still angry about how I felt today. I'm still angry now tonight.
Wilfred, now I seem to remember that on this programme some time ago, you came out as a Reform supporter.
Well, support is probably going a bit too far, but I think that there's a lot of things that they say that I agree with. But what Nigel said yesterday is exactly how I felt. When I saw that video, I had absolute rage at how could something like that happen in this country. So what Nigel was doing was he was voicing what a lot of people felt. And I think one of the problems with today's politics is that the left seems to think that actually don't say the things that a lot of people are feeling, because by saying it, it's then going to incite some sort of reaction. There is always going to be a minority of people who are going to jump on the bandwagon and go too far with it. But I think what he's doing is he's expressing the fact that a lot of people felt there is some injustice there. My view is this: I don't think there was anything about racism and all this thing. I think everybody's got this wrong. As far as I'm concerned, this is about compliance. So what the police do, they arrive to a place and they see a very nice, compliant Indian family doing all this, and then this poor kid who can't be compliant rolling around, and then these assumptions start. Okay, these people over there, believable. Let's handcuff this guy here because there's something dodgy about him because he can't be compliant to an order. You don't handcuff somebody that you feel can be compliant. So I think one of the things that police need to do is this prejudice towards people who cannot be compliant.
Our next question kind of goes on to that, so I'll stop you there and we'll continue that conversation in the next question. Max Wilkinson, I don't know why you were sitting in PMQs, but I could see some of your Lib Dem colleagues sitting behind Nigel Farage, absolutely incandescent about what he was saying.
I was sitting at some of those benches that run parallel, or at 90 degrees along the end. So I had a fairly good view of what was going on. It was very clear what Nigel Farage was going to do the moment he was called. The short answer to the question from Joe is yes, he does use overly emotive language, and he knows the result of that. As politicians, when we get elected or when we end up in the House of Lords, we know that if we're in the media and if we're making statements, our words carry weight, and some people will act upon those words. And that means that we have a responsibility at these moments where there are tensions, when there's division, not to act in a way that is going to make things worse. Nigel Farage, his first act was not to heed the suggestions of Mark Novak. His first act was to record a social media video. He didn't, by the way, Nigel Farage, show up to the statement which was being made by the Home Secretary. and responded to across all sides of the House. He didn't show up to that. But his first act was to record a social media video talking, I think, about pure cold rage. And when you say things like pure cold rage, certain people in society will take a steer from you and they will then react that way. And what then happened, of course, was people gathering in Southampton, in the city, the place where it happened. Tommy Robinson was there. And Nigel Farage, of course, always tries to distance himself from Tommy Robinson. But on this, they seem to be on the same side of things. Now, it was clear what was going to happen when Nigel Farage made those statements on the morning after the sentencing. And today, when he stood up in PMQs, he had an opportunity to actually dial it down a bit. What he chose to do was dial up another notch. And he does that because he's very successfully made a career and indeed become very rich off the back of using divisive and hate-filled language that has divided British communities. Now, he says he's a patriot. I do not believe that Nigel Farage is one of those people who can be counted upon to do the right thing for Britain. And when he does this, he makes things in our country worse, not better.
Amanda?
Yeah, does Farage use language to provoke and inflame? He uses it to provoke and inflame everybody, I think, not just the right, and to divide. He wants extreme reactions. But what's really important here is that we separate the excessive inflammation and the negatives that can come from that. That's not the same thing as shutting down entirely discussion of what's causing anger. I think
Absolutely.
What we've seen today, published from the Hampshire police policy statements showing what those policemen and women had been trained in, which mirror what's in place all around the country in the police and probably in many other public services as well. There's been probably a bit of an overreach, overcorrection, where to try and equalise outcomes, many police forces have tried a bit too hard to treat people differently in order to try and get matching outcomes. And that is resented. There is some truth in the suggestion that we have a two-tier, a multi-tier system.
How you've put it and how Kemi Badenoch has put it, and I think Ed Davies said something vaguely similar today as well. I mean, that's not unreasonable. And politicians from all parties have condemned the violence in Southampton last night, but Nigel Farage hasn't. And Wilfred, sorry, you're having a bit of an issue with the call. I mean, I think that's really odd that a person who wants to be Prime Minister of this country has not. First of all, I mean, the first thing he said in the House of Commons, apart from paying tribute to the family and giving his condolences, ought to have been, I condemn any violent protests on this. But he didn't, did he?
Okay. So he should have condemned any violence. But one of the things that I'm really concerned about is the reason why we're all discussing this, the reason why you're getting a lot of people ringing in, because it is a subject that the public care about. And it is no good us pretending and shutting it down and all being polite. It is good that we actually have this open discussion that how could something like this happen in this country? And is it two-tier policing? I don't believe it is. I think it's down to the training. It's how police are conditioned to deal with situations when they find themselves. That, to me, is what's happening. And the worst thing about this is that we have gone a long way in this country to try and get a better understanding of different races and different communities. This is going to put that all back. As a black person who is in his 70s nearly, I still suffer from racism. And I'm not going to like it if somebody's going to say he's playing the race card when someone I'm being racially abused. I could tell you incidents that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And that is going to make my life a misery because of this.
It's interesting that Jack Straw today has said that he thinks that policing has overshot on...
We ought to explain to our younger listeners that Jack Straw was Home Secretary under Tony Blair. I constantly have to worry about this. So we use acronyms and people's names that people don't know who they are.
But he has come out today and said that he thinks police forces have set policy frameworks that have pushed them too far in the direction of treating people differently.
I don't think it's anything to do with race. I really believe that police generally want to get control. And what you do is that you'll always give the benefits of the doubt to those who are complying. So if somebody's all their arms running around and making a big fuss, or even rolling around on the suspicion is that they're the perpetrators. And I think that is what is wrong. I think that if it was a white family or a black family, they would have actually met that situation differently. So the police are conditioned to go with what is compliant. Those who are compliant are the ones who are innocent. And that is what I believe happened in this case.
If I can, the judge's remarks in this are actually quite instructive. I would imagine most people in the country have not read the judge's remarks about what happened on the evening, and actually having a look at those and seeing what the judge said and seeing how he explained what happened and what the police did. And by the way, the police got it very badly wrong and tragically wrong in this case. But the explanation of what scene they arrived on and how they acted with a group of people who were telling lies and someone saying this is a race crime, in those circumstances, the police had, in the dark, right, actually quite a difficult job. They got it tragically wrong. They got it wrong. There is no excuse for the way they acted. But the judge's remarks do make clear that it's a bit more complicated than this is an issue of two-tier policing. So when Nigel Farage and others stand up and say this is all about two-tier policing, this is about a set of circumstances and failure, as Wilfred said, of training probably, failure of those individual officers to enact what they should have done, but also people making snap judgments about what happens on a scene at any given time. And police have to do that hundreds of times a day. And it's a total travesty that in this circumstances they got it wrong. And Henry Novak was terribly failed by those police officers.
The other thing that I think everyone has to guard against is looking at one incident, drawing conclusions, and then thinking that applies to every policeman in the country. Anyway, we've got another question on this coming up in a couple of minutes. It's 8:15.
This is LBC.
Gordon Ramsay here. Somewhere out there, someone is trying to sear a steak in a pan that belongs in the bin. Don't be that person. That's why I use Hexlad in my kitchens. Their hybrid range gives you the durability of cast iron, the searing power of stainless steel, and the white, clean ease of non-stick, all in one pan. Pro-level performance with every cook. Shop the summer sale now at hexlad.co.uk.
Here's a tale of two commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with Your Parking Space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With Your Parking Space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the code GET10 for £10 off your first booking. Download the Your Parking Space app today.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when the standout summer party spread even outshines the unfortunate weather. Make it a summer to remember with our delicious #1 summer range, including fresh Italian burrata with a creamy centre on a bed of sweet and tangy aubergine caponata, and succulent aromatic coronation spatchcock with crispy Bombay spiced onions. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
17 minutes past 8. Wilfred Emmanuel Jones is with us. Alison Hume, Labour MP. Max Wilkinson, Lib Dem Home Affairs spokesperson, and Amanda Spielman, Conservative peer. Right, Anthony is on the line in Blackpool. Long time no speak, Anthony.
Okay, hi. Obviously on two-tier policing. What are the panel's opinions on, would they agree that Farage's accusation of a two-tier policing against white people is a blatant misrepresentation which inverts the historical reality of the oppression subjected upon ethnic minorities, whose oppression essentially is being erased by these.
Right, so effectively, the question is, because Wilfred, I think his earpiece isn't working, so let me just...
turning the world on its head.
Do you agree that the police's attitude towards ethnic minorities is being misrepresented and the notion of two-tier policing has been inverted? I think that sums up what you were saying there, Anthony. Wilfred, let's start with you because you were sort of approaching this in your previous answer.
So do I think that the police's attitude towards ethnic minorities is at a disadvantage? Look, one of the things about grouping everyone together is that actually you come to with these generalizations. I think there's a totally different attitude from the police towards the Asian community than they would have towards the black community. The reality is that we all have prejudices. And one of the things we have to understand is that we all do. We're not awful people about it. So the reason we get trained is how we actually get to see the stereotypes that we bring into a situation. As I said before the break, I still have to deal with the fact that people come to me and address me in stereotypes that has nothing to do with my sort of personality. So we all have to accept, the police are not an exception about this, we all have prejudices and we always have to fight against those prejudices, because if we don't, we then go and make catastrophic decisions, which is unjust. So I don't think the police are exceptional. It's something that we all have to be working towards, seeing that it's faults that we have within.
So give me an example. You said within the last 2 weeks.
You did it 2 weeks ago. So I'm going in to deliver. I own a shop, okay? I own a shop and I'm gone to get some deliveries. I'm going in and there's a new security guard manning the gate. I was told to go around there and they says, no, you can't come in. You can't come in. And at the same time, and I explained, look, I'm the owner of the shop. I can't believe it. And at the same time, they're allowing white people in without any things at all, because everything about me, the stereotype, well, is black, he probably shouldn't be here, actually, probably trouble. And so I have to deal with that all the time.
To be fair, William, you can be trouble.
I can be trouble, but it's got to be when it's deserved. The other thing I always remember, because I was in politics for a while, and the thing that I could always remember is knocking on doors, and people don't say anything, but you could tell with their reaction, the shock of, what are you doing here? People are very, very polite. And so what a lot of white people don't understand is that a lot of the prejudices that black people face is not what people say, it's their attitude, it's a vibe. And sometimes people don't understand how we know it, we could feel it. I know when I go into a place and people are surprised or a bit concerned that, what's a black guy doing here? That's what we have to face. And so the education, the learning that we've had over these decades where we really started to understand this has made Britain one of the greatest persons as a black person to live. I wouldn't want to live in any other country. I think we are seriously advanced in this country compared to the rest of Europe, for example, and we've made some fantastic progress, and I don't want to see that being damaged, because we have incidences like this where people think, oh, black people are sort of getting treated differently to the rest of us. That ain't the case. And so I think it's very, very important that I sort of make that clear.
Apparently I called you William just now.
No, right.
Obviously I meant Wilfred. Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take a slightly different position on this, I think, because whether we like it or not, there is now a long, long chain of horrible cases where it's clear that the fear of being accused of racism has been a significant factor in action not being taken. Grooming gangs, Manchester bombing, Axel Rudakabana, Valdo Kalakani, poor little Sarah Sharif. On the one hand, yes, racism is real. Yes, it's right to stay alert. But equally, I think it is possible that the mechanisms that we've put in place to achieve a worthy objective are now in some ways backfiring and leading to legitimate public concerns that people in public services won't take action where they should if they're afraid of being accused of racism.
Ian, I don't want to hug
that's
this.
Something that's got to be addressed.
I don't want to hug this, but you introduced me as the Black Farmer. That's the name of my brand, okay? Now, I can remember launching that brand, a lot of people really horrified. There's a real confusion in this country about what is the correct language to use when you're referring to people of colour. And you're right. There are certain people who do not know how people should be addressed. And there's a feeling that somehow if we say the wrong thing, black people are going to be offended. The only way you change that is through these sort of discussions, education. That's one of the reasons I call my brand the Black Farmer, because it's in your face. You could see it. It isn't anything to be apologising for. It isn't anything that's being racist. But that's what a lot of people think because of that form of confusion.
Max?
I think I basically agree with what Amanda said. I mean, she's totally right. And all the cases that you listed there, there is basically agreement across the benches in Parliament, not 100%, but pretty close to, that in those cases, the grooming gangs, the Sara Sharif and others, the public servants, and it's not always police, right? It's people who work in local councils, licensing officers, people in social services. They felt like they were not able to act as they might have done based on their inclinations because there was something else going on in the background. Even down to, in the case of policing on the grooming gangs issue, where there's just a complete widespread failure to properly take down data to do with the racial background of potential offenders and known offenders, right? So we have to, as a society, as Wilfred said, have a proper discussion about this and actually do it in a way that is not divisive. And going back to the previous question, that's why some of the ways in which we handle this and the language that we use has to be really, really sensitive.
Absolutely.
But I will go back to Theresa May's first words when she came into Downing Street as the new Prime Minister. She made what was a really brave speech for a Conservative, set a decent agenda, I think, and was saying all of the right things. We clearly have gone some way wrong since then. The Conservative Party's gone off in very many different directions. The country's got it wrong on a number of these cases that Amanda talked about. But to Wilfred's point, right, this isn't a binary thing. We can't just go, we've got it right or we've got it wrong. It has to be something that's much more discursive, and society arrives at conclusions by having grown up and mature debates about these issues. And actually, that is what people from all the ethnic minorities that I end up talking to in my constituency and elsewhere want us to do. No one is suggesting we should all just shut up and not have the discussion. In fact, sometimes you do hear that, but you very rarely hear
how you have the discussion.
Exactly right. You very rarely hear that, shut up and don't have the discussion, apart from certain types of white people that you tend to meet who are very, very worried about this because they themselves have overcorrected.
Well, Fiona wants to point out that ethnic minorities still face harsher sentences, more deaths in custody and more poor treatment in hospitals. And I mean, certainly on that latter one, we've got a lot of experience of that from our callers. Alison?
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with what Max and Amanda have said. And I suppose I just would like to say that we're talking about an incident where it's clear the police didn't react properly. However, there are thousands of police officers across the country doing a very difficult job, making correct decisions in very difficult circumstances. And one of the police officers, there was a police officer who was incorrectly identified as being involved. He's had to leave his home for the safety of his family. And I think that, I am a politician, and so I would say to Wilfred, we do have a responsibility to dial down the rhetoric, and I would say that it's important that the investigation is allowed to continue, that the conclusions are drawn and the lessons are learned, and there will be a review of police training. There has to be, but let's just let the process play out and not inflame the situation by being, experts.
Okay. So we're saying that is it's code for shutting it down?
No, I'm not shutting it down. Wilfred, everyone feels appalled. I watched the video through my fingers. It's okay to feel horribly upset. Nobody could watch that video without just crying inside. However, Nigel Farage, Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch, Max, myself, as people in the public eye, we have a responsibility. And actually the public want us to be a little bit more restrained. So it's not about feeling, it's about the correct use of language. It's not about shutting it down.
But perhaps part of what the public want is for their politicians to express what they're actually feeling.
Not if it causes riots, Wilfred.
Well, look, you can't be responsible for people. You can't not say things because it might cause riots. I just think that's not the way to do it properly.
But Wilfred, there are ways of saying things.
Well, again, that's making a judgment.
Well, hang on. Kemi Badenoch, your former party leader, she said things which were fairly similar to Nigel Farage in some ways, in that what she thinks has been an overcorrection since the George Floyd murder, and that's the reason that these guidelines have come in. But she did it in a way that no normal person could object to. She didn't use inflammatory language.
Every one of the party leaders did it exactly how the chattering class is like it. The reality is that actually Farage is speaking on behalf of a lot of people who would express themselves in the way that he did. And those people need to have a voice.
Totally right. And as Democrats, we don't want to shut anything down, right? No one suggested we shouldn't have the discussion. Going back to the point of the question, if you read the NPCC document that I think the Tories and Reform are holding up as their sort of smoking gun on this, it very effectively details all of the reasons why the police were trying to tackle the problem that they had, effectively policing black people, but in large part non-white people. And it's all about the propensity of a police officer to taser someone who is black, the propensity of a police officer to stop someone who's driving a car or stop and search in the street who is black. And trying to right those wrongs was something that Theresa May was talking about when she became Prime Minister. I don't want to sound like a Theresa May advocate here. I'm a liberal.
Well, you're a bit of a fanboy.
But it is a point, isn't it? Because actually, it shows that across political dividing lines, there was not so long ago a much better way of talking about this. We seem to have gone off in all too many different directions, and too many people have attempted to shut down discussions in the past. I don't think that happens anymore, and we have a much more open discussion. But part of that open discussion must be, as Alison said, politicians.
I think it's still a problem. Yeah. You look at some debates on, I will say the BBC, for example, where they will absolutely shy away from. Look at all this stuff about Nigel Farage not being allowed on desert island discs. I suspect that the truth is somewhat not what the Mail on Sunday wrote. But there is an attitude in certain media organisations that some subjects are far too sensitive to have a discussion on because people might draw the wrong conclusions.
You're not going to tell me Nigel Farage isn't on the BBC often enough, are you? Because
keep inviting him on, but apparently he says he doesn't want to come on anymore. So
one wonders why he wants to avoid the questions about that £5 million donation that he didn't declare. Who knows?
Well, one of our listeners texted in earlier to say, well, the only reason he said this today is so we're not talking about his £5 million donation, which I thought was a very cynical attitude, but who knows? It may be true. Right, more questions on very different subjects coming up. It's 8:30 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines from Darryl Jackson.
Hampshire's Chief Constable has rejected a claim from Nigel Farage of two-tier policing. Student Henry Novak was arrested as he lay dying in Southampton after his Sikh murderer falsely accused the 18-year-old of racial abuse. The Royal Navy says its thoughts and sympathies are with the families and friends of 3 service personnel killed in a helicopter crash. The aircraft came down during a training exercise in Devon early this morning. And the Mayor of London's spoken about how he wants to address violence against women and girls on the capital's transport network. Sir Sadiq Khan's told the State of London debate he also wants to make travelling at night safer. LBC weather, more blustery showers tonight, some clear spells in the east, a low of 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
Guys, gals and non-binary pals, we're Copperfield, the UK's only breast cancer awareness charity for young people. We educate people on the signs of breast cancer, as when found early, treatments are more effective and survival rates higher. This is your reminder to check your boobs, chest or pecs. Learn how at copperfield.org.
Up to speed. Your Formula One podcast. Round 6. It's the Jewel in the Crown, Monaco.
New episodes every Monday and Thursday on YouTube or Global Player.
Get iPhone 17 in the Vodafone Business Summer Sale. iPhone 17 is built for business with all-day battery life and the powerful A19 chip for fast, efficient performance. Experience it all on the best network for business and save £300. Hurry, offer ends the 22nd of July. Vodafone Business.
Businesses with up to 9 employees only. Based on iPhone 17 and 24-month unlimited airtime plan. Best network is awarded at the Mobile Industry Awards. Saving calculated over 36 months.
With Halfords, this summer is about doing more. More days out, more last-minute plans. And with roof boxes and bike racks fitted in store, there's room for it all. Make sure your car is adventure-ready with a 10-point car check. And stay prepped for whatever the British weather throws your way with aircon checks and wiper blades fitted in store. Our experts are on hand with anything you need. So shop online or in store and get out there with Halfords. Services subject to availability. Full T's and C's apply. See halfords.com for details.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:32. On our panel, Alison Hume, Labour MP for Scarborough and Whitby, Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesperson, MP for Cheltenham, Baroness Amanda Spielman, Conservative peer, the former head of Ofsted, and Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, businessman and shop owner called the Black Farmer.
Exactly right.
See, that's what I've always known you as. When we were Conservative candidates together, that was your USP, wasn't it? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right. Louisa in Goodmays says, there are 30,000 fewer pupils in private schools. Well, first of all, congratulations for using fewer than less. Since Labour stuck VAT onto private school fees. Does this show it really was just the politics of envy and hasn't helped the education system at all? Now, a bit of background to this. These new figures come from a census conducted by the Independent Schools Council. Amanda.
Yeah, well, first of all, clearly it was just sort of straightforward class war and a sop to the left of the Labour Party, a nice sort of easy win. And so on the one hand, we're throwing away something that's actually been tremendously valuable for overseas soft power. One of the things this country's done a remarkable job of is building relations with elites from other countries by educating their children. So that's been thrown away. The big mistake that I think the private school sector made here that lost its support was to price itself out of educating the middle classes at the point that only the richest people can afford to use private schools. You stop having a broad base of support. Pretty much every country does have quite a healthy private school sector. It's a myth that there's something peculiar about having private schools in Britain. And there's only a tiny number of countries that outlaw them. But there's no question that we've made a very, very hostile environment and that quite a lot of economic damage will be inflicted as a result.
Alison?
Well, I don't think it was the politics of envy. I think it was politics of necessity. So when the Labour government came into power, there wasn't very much money. The school system desperately needed investment. 94% of children go to state schools. And getting rid of the tax breaks on private schools has unlocked a lot of money that we can invest into state schools. I think roles are falling anyway for primary schools. And as I understand it, more private schools are actually opening. So I'm more concerned about giving a good education.
Sorry, where have you got that from? Because all the figures show that there's a net loss of about, I think the last time I saw it was at least 50 schools.
Okay, well, maybe my facts aren't right.
It's some tiny little special schools are opening, and but much larger schools are closing. But
to go back to the state education, we're doing a big piece of work, the white paper, to fix the SEND system, and that is going to benefit millions of children, and that is the priority of the Labour government, breaking down the barriers of opportunity for all children, not just the children that go to private school, which are a tiny percentage.
Wilfred?
I'm from society's dustbin heap. I went to what they used to call the secondary moderns, and school was a nightmare and was an absolute failure for me. Even before my children was born, I made a promise to myself that they would go to private school. Not only did they go to private school, they went to boarding school. And I made that promise because I wanted to give them the advantage that sort of education gives them. I'm not a rich man. Well, I'm probably wealthier now than I was back then. But I scrimped, I saved. It's not rich people who actually are all sending their kids to private school or boarding school. People like me who have to really, really struggle to give them the advantage. And again, being a black kid, you understand what a disadvantage by not having the right education. And the good thing about schools, it isn't about really the education, it's about the confidence you give that child within themselves. And that there's this one thing that these private schools do is do that. That's what you could do. Because the thing is that education does not necessarily make it easy for you. It's a confidence that whatever comes your way, you will find a way through it. So the worst thing that this government has done is got rid of that, because there's lots of people like me who want to work hard, who want to give their children that advantage. And why should they be penalised? Because the truth is, the state system cannot accommodate all types of kids.
You can still do that. You can't. We've just cut the tax breaks. The kids that did well are the kids who have the
ability to learn in a particular way. They could actually absorb information, regurgitate it, and pass exams. I was never able to do that. I was destined to go to a school where they could pay more attention so I could learn in a different way. And so the state has to come to terms with there's certain things that it can't do. And if parents like me want to spend money so their children could go and learn in a different way, they should be allowed to.
And
Alison,
you've
called it a tax break. There is no other country in Europe that taxes education. This is actually a hefty additional tax that nobody else charges. In fact, curiously enough, I don't think it would have been possible without Brexit. And it's not going to save the government a penny. And we're seeing from these numbers that the fairly small number that it was forecast that this would release for state schools isn't going to get realised. So it really is just a signal.
Well, when I start thinking about education, I start from the position where
You've got Cheltenham Ladies College in your constituency, haven't you?
I've got Cheltenham Ladies College, I've got Cheltenham College, I've got Dean.
I did think about sending my daughter there, but it was a bit traditional for me.
The Ladies College does a lot of good work. I used to work in the marketing department there for a very short period of time.
At Cheltenham, did you?
Yeah, it's a lovely place to work. And the principal, Eve Jardine Young, is a brilliant woman. I will say that. But what I was trying to say was that when I start thinking about education, I start thinking about from the position of, how do we get the local state primaries right? How do we make sure that those kids have the best start in life by going into a decent preschool and then a decent primary school and then through to a better secondary school? If the changes that are being made or that have been made to VAT were making a tangible difference, and I was now speaking to primary school head teachers and secondary school head teachers, and they were telling me we're now awash with money and all the problems are solved, I would have a little bit more sympathy for what the government's done. What I'm actually hearing is that things are still pretty difficult. And that's why I remain sceptical about this change. There is another point, right? If you live in a place like Cheltenham where a lot of people are employed in private schools, there are jobs at risk here as well. One of the private schools on the edge of Cheltenham, I believe, is either closing down or has closed down. That's going to put more pressure on the secondary schools within my constituency. Within Cheltenham, and I think I live in this catchment area actually, there are big places where you can't get your kids into a secondary school at the moment, even though a new secondary school was built on the south edge of Cheltenham fairly recently. So if the government can solve all of these problems as a result of bringing in VAT on private school fees, then I would urge them to do it as soon as possible. So I don't hear from people in my constituency saying, I've got to send my kid 5 miles to the north of Cheltenham to a secondary school and I've got to drive them there or get them on a bus. There is another point in all this, actually, that there are a lot of people who were making the sacrifices that Wilfred talked about to send their kids to private school because there was a specific need in SEND, right? And I think that was a blind spot in this legislation, and I think the government needs to address that as well.
And we are addressing it.
And it's not, I should point out, it's not just rich people who send their kids to private schools. I mean, I get a lot of calls from people who, they might be a two-earner family, but they're not much over the average wage each, and they're scrimping and saving to be able to do that because they don't feel the school in their local area can educate their children properly. Anyway, we could carry on with that subject, but I do want to introduce another one. Matt in Burnley says, on the show yesterday, George Monbiot suggested that farmers should start growing different crops in order to support climate change efforts. Does the panel think that responsibility for meeting climate targets lies with the state, private industry, or consumers? Now, he said to me when we discussed the government committing the UK to cutting carbon emissions from their 1990 levels by 87% by the year 2040. Max Wilkinson for the Lib Dems.
I mean, my general view, and I have, I'll put my cards on the table, an entirely urban constituency. The NFU tells me that they think maybe there's 3 farms in my constituency. They're small holdings. They are farmers, but they're not operating acres and acres and acres, right? Cheltenham is an urban constituency. But we're surrounded by beautiful countryside. And one of the things I've come to appreciate is that actually farmers are a really important part of that countryside, and they are, in the main, excellent custodians of the countryside as well. So I I think what we need to focus on, particularly after the betrayals of Brexit and the farmers being told that all their problems were going to be solved after we left the European Union, we need to focus on making sure farmers are allowed to get on with the job of producing the food that we need so we become more self-sufficient in food in this country, rather than suggesting that the first thing that should be on their mind is something that is adjacent to what they're doing, when actually they do a pretty decent job in the first place. Actually, one of the things the previous government did that was pretty good was start to get farmers looking at things like planting more trees on their land and then working out how that can be part of their business model as well. I think we can do more, but I'm very wary after the family farm tax debates that have happened recently that actually the farming community needs a lot more sensitivity and what they need is support from us, and less people telling them do this, do that.
Fewer people, Max, fewer.
Sorry, Ian.
The grammar police are operating on this programme.
You're getting a round of applause from behind the glass.
No, they always clap when I do that.
I'm a trained journalist as well. I shouldn't have got that wrong.
Wilfred.
The power lies with the consumer. It's the consumer that forces change. The only people the big retailers fear are the consumers. If they decide they want change, the supermarkets would follow. So that's the first thing. So my brand, for example, is only here today because the consumers demanded it from the retailers. If it was down to them, they would stay with what they know. The other thing, farming is changing. We now could actually grow things in shipping containers, vertical farming. So the idea that how we used to do traditional farming ain't going to be what it used to be about 10, 20 years, which is a good thing. So when we start talking about the environment, actually, it ain't necessarily going to be used for the traditional form of farming. And that is good. But if we're going to want the change to come about, is that how you say to the consumers, if you start to buy these foods that are produced in new ways, there's going to be some benefit for you. So that's what I would like to see. Either it's cheaper or there is some tax relief. So therefore, we then get more businesses deciding, actually, let's start growing these in these sort of containers and do it in a different way rather than using traditional land. Outside is a nightmare because you've got to play with the weather or the conditions. We now have the science where you don't really need to be neat on the land.
Alison.
So I'm just thinking about what crops you could grow in shipping containers.
Well, they do. You could now get your herbs. You could get salads. You could get lettuce. You could get tomatoes. You could get It's
like a big windowsill then.
Well, I mean, you have control.
Anyway, let's go back to the question.
Yeah, so
do you think the responsibility lies with the state, private industry, or consumers?
All three. All three. I think Wilfred's right. It's driven by consumers. Industry will respond to that, but the state has to take a responsibility for, bringing down. We've got climate emergency. So, I suppose I would, as somebody who has a lot of farmers in my constituency, my primary efforts, a bit like Max is saying, is to support farmers. The farmers are saying to me, red diesel's too expensive, we need to get the hay in. I'm pressing the government to bring down the cost of red diesel. The lobster fishermen, they want to get the veterinary agreement over the line so it gets rid of the red tape. As a constituency MP, I'm working really hard to support my farmers rather than telling them what crops they should be growing. So, I mean, I'm a very practical person, Ian.
So what you're saying is Max has a very simple life as an MP without farmers in his constituency. Amanda?
Yeah, the job of government is to get the incentives right. It's not to control what people do and force them. I do think it's time the government remembered its promise to tread more lightly on people's lives. It's going rapidly the other way. And it's also important to look at the incentives that you build into the system regularly to say, is it actually leading to rational outcomes? So concreting over most of the farmland in the south of England to put social panels on, I think will be a dreadful own goal. Sorry, what did I say?
Social. That's an idea.
It's an idea, but I did mean solar panels. That will be a hideous unintended consequence, which will make all of us enjoy life a whole lot less. And it's the kind of thing you should be saying, hang on a minute, maybe we haven't got that one quite right, let's adjust. So whatever the incentives you put into the system, they've got to be flexible, they've got to be reviewed. People have mustn't just set, this must happen in 2014 and absolutely anything is worth the sacrifice to get there. You've got to stay balanced and say, what is it that actually makes people's lives better?
Right, many more questions to come. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 8:47.
LBC.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when the delicious 3 for £8 deli spread is what you remember from the garden party rather than why you were having it in the first place. Make it a summer to remember with 3 for £8 on our Moorish deli range, including creamy mozzarella balls with fresh basil pesto and pine nuts, juicy black garlic chorizo with wildflower honey, and aromatic Thai green chicken meatballs. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices may vary in Channel Islands, Little Waitrose and partners and concessions.
With problem earwax, things don't feel quite right. The NHS recommends using olive oil to help relieve build-up, so Otex offers medical-grade olive oil in both drops and spray. But if you need to act faster, there's Otex Express. However you choose to treat it, choose the earwax treatment brand most recommended by pharmacists, and be clear to hear with Otex. Based on a survey of 200 pharmacies. For verification, visit otexear.com.
Dear passengers, this is the final boarding call for all those whose minds are already elsewhere. Taking in the skyline of Hong Kong, feeling the energy of Mumbai, walking the historic streets of Boston, or heading out on safari near Johannesburg.
Wherever your mind is right now, we'll take you there. Discover the world with Swiss. Book your flight on swiss.com.
Hey Sainsbury's, any way you can save me a few quid on my weekly shop?
Well, Jane, try Your Nectar prices. Every week in Your Nectar app, you can unlock up to 10 personalised discounts on things you love at Sainsbury's. A Janesbury's, if you will.
Sounds like my kind of place.
Get personalised discounts with Your Nectar prices. That's good food for all of us. Sainsbury's. 18 plus Nectar app required. Unlock up to 10 Your Nectar prices weekly. Available in supermarkets, online and in locals with Smart Shop. T&Cs apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:49. Hope you've enjoyed the programme so far. We have with us Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, Alison Hugh, Max Wilkinson and Amanda Spielman. Warren in Lincolnshire says, the Ukraine has launched another big drone attack on Russia, this time hitting an oil depot in St. Petersburg on the day that a big economic summit called Russian Davos began. But while the Ukrainians can score big successes like this, can they ever really win this war? Putin shows no sign of backing down, so how does this end? Well, these drone strikes landed around 10 miles away from where the St. Petersburg Economic Forum is taking place. Attendees in the forum include Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan. Well, I'm sure that makes it very exciting. Alison.
Can this war ever end? It will only end through diplomacy. And I have to say that our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has shown very good leadership on this, and the coalition of the willing is very important, leading from the front, and we have to get behind Ukraine. It strikes me when I go to our local Ukrainian cafe and hear the stories of the people there that it could be us in a different scenario. It could be us, and we will need the support of Europe. So we have to stand firm. We have to use all diplomatic efforts, but we just can't let Putin win.
And what about the ethics of the Ukrainians striking so far deep into Russia?
It's a war. It's a war, and Zelensky is digging deep, and this is why it's so important that we support him.
Quite right. Amanda?
I'm not sure I've got anything meaningful to add on this one.
I think we have to stand firm with Ukraine. It's really important that in this country we don't take even a single half step away from our close partnership with Ukraine. There's been really brilliant, I think, cross-party, almost unanimous cross-party support on this, with some notable exceptions where some people have said some slightly concerning things. But at the same time, we need to be very clear that the UK's role is part of the defence of Europe, right? And we have a really important role in NATO. We need to be looking forward to defence and security pacts with Europe because of the lack of surety that we have in the relationship with Trump's America, and that means that we are going to have to keep stepping up, keep doing what we can, keep convening those discussions. Starmer gets a kicking every single day in the press. One of the things he's done pretty well, I think, is maintain those relationships with Zelensky and put him to the fore, put him in front of the king. I think that's all worked really, really well. And actually, the previous prime ministers did that too.
Your party leader doesn't, though. Your party leader didn't want Keir Starmer to be want the king to be put in front of Trump.
No, we didn't want the king to be put in front of Trump. We wanted Zelensky to be put in front of the king.
I misunderstood.
Of course. And that's a really important part of the role that the UK can play, because the king has that soft power around the world that takes this country a really long way. But we also have to have an eye on what might happen next. And our role in defending the Baltic states as well, and our partnership with Estonia is something that is not talked about an awful lot in this country. But our role in NATO is something that we need to defend really, really strongly. And politicians, some on the far left, who have suggested that we can just ditch our NATO membership, well, they need to be very clear that if we do that, then we're putting at risk the relations that we have with Ukraine and the important role that we have in the defence of Europe. And that is something that we don't talk about enough. And of course, today we are 1 year on from the Strategic Defence Review publication. The Defence Investment Plan needs to be published now to give the private sector the signals it needs to invest to make sure that our armed forces have the equipment that they need as soon as possible.
Wilfred.
Words mean nothing. So what Putin knows is that we talk about support, we give money, but the ultimate test is that are we prepared to put troops on the ground? And Putin knows we're not. And so therefore, everything else we say is irrelevant. So what we now have is a war of attrition. And eventually there will have to be some agreement. And that agreement is going to come when the Ukrainians realize that actually we get nice words, we get some money, but we are not prepared to do the ultimate sacrifice. And whilst we're not prepared to do that, they don't stand a chance. So if I was saying to them, let's deal with that absolute reality, because that's the only way you're going to stop this war of attrition. We put troops on the ground.
Well, I suppose you could argue that if the Trump administration doesn't help Ukraine much, and they're not, there's an argument this is just delaying the inevitable.
Exactly right. That's what I just think it is. And so therefore, they have occasionally triumphs by getting deep into Russia and all that sort of stuff. It means nothing. If you've got another side that's going to just carry on regardless, the sensible thing, if you're not going to get outside help, which how many years they've been asking for and they're not going to get, make a deal. That's what I would be advising.
Now, I'm almost hesitating to ask this next question because we've literally got 3.5 minutes to answer it, but I'm going to anyway. It's from Joanna in Bracknell. How do we defuse this country's pensions time bomb? The trade body Pensions UK has warned that more than 3/4 of the working population are not saving enough for what it describes as a moderate lifestyle in retirement, which it says would cost just under £33,000 a year for one person and just over £45,000 a year for two people. I must admit I would question those statistics. But right, you've literally each, I'm afraid, only got a minute to address this. Amanda.
OK, I looked at those numbers and £33,000 a year for one person is just about exactly the net income of somebody on the national median full-time earnings. So to say that 3/4 of people will be a bit worse off than the average person is in work is not of itself so dreadful. But nevertheless, we know that there's a big problem that the incentives for pension savings aren't right. They've just been made a bit worse by removing some of the flexibility for salary sacrifice. So it should be a real priority to get more flexibility into the ways that people can save, to encourage people to save long term.
Max.
The only way that we're going to solve this in the longer term is by having a growing economy. And the only way that we're going to get a growing economy is by making the private sector fire, and not fire people, but fire up. That's the engine room. SMEs need more support to employ people so they then earn wages, which they then can pay into pensions. And the only way that in the shorter term we're going to be able to get the private sector firing is by making sure that we fix our trading relationship with the European Union, because that is a big lever that we can pull by joining a customs union and then going further in future, which means that the SMEs that trade with Europe are able to then do what they need to do to get our economy going. It's a difficult one. The pensions subject in general needs to come down to people saving for their private pensions and making sure we've got an equitable deal on public pensions as well. But it's all underpinned by an economy that works. And at the moment, the previous government blew it up. This government's not repairing it.
Alison.
Two things. The first thing is education. We've got to make sure that young people are paying into their pensions. We started far too late in this country. I lived in Australia for a while in the 1990s. They introduced superannuation, matched by the employer. They were way ahead of the game, and I've got an incredibly healthy pension situation there. So education for younger people, and what really worries me is that women have a pension gap of 30 to 40% less than men, due to part-time work or taking time out. That is the real crisis, and I think that I'm pressing the government to talk about this, because I don't think women realise that they're going to be retiring and really struggling with this gap.
Fair income. Wilfred?
I'm 68 years old. The idea of retiring is anathema. I just think we need to actually rethink our attitude about retirement and actually encourage older people to work. Now, you're only going to encourage them to work if they're going to see some benefit. So for employers employing them, they see some benefit. But the idea that you retire at the age of 65 and then do nothing for the rest of life, I just think those are the ideas of yesterday.
But we've got a youth unemployment crisis, so you want to shut young people out of the economy and have old people working until they're 90.
Well, I employ a lot of young people. If we had more time, I could tell you how to fix the youth unemployment problem. But the quick taster for that is this: is one of the biggest reasons why we have such high youth unemployment is because of bad parenting, soft parenting that allows their kids not to go out and face the real world.
Go on quickly.
Just very quickly, you were saying you work until however old, but
it's not working.
No,
if
Wilfred, let me finish. There are some jobs which, manual labour, people have to retire because they cannot.
But they could
carry
change
on
another.
working.
Yeah, that's fine. So you could change another career. You don't have to continue doing the same thing that you've always done. It's just that the work gives you purpose. It makes you alive, and that's what I think is important. You don't want to be sitting around thinking what's going to be happening tomorrow.
Right. Well, on that bombshell, let's move on to our fun question. It's from Kai in Cambridge. Today in Denmark, the new coalition government was formed. As is tradition, each incoming and outgoing minister gave each other a gift. What gifts do you think Keir Starmer and his successor should trade when the inevitable time comes? Well, I suppose it depends who his successor might be. Alison, you're in the hot seat on this one first.
OK, well, I think it's going to be trading a political football. So Keir Starmer's a mad Arsenal fan, so I think he should give the successor the full Arsenal kit and receive whoever the kit is for the incoming.
Or an Everton kit, you mean?
I can't possibly comment.
Wilfred?
I would give them a box of paracetamol. Because that will tell you the headaches you're going to have to endure, and that will be what I'd be given.
Amanda?
Well, we know that Keir Starmer likes a pair of designer glasses, so that's what I would have his successor give him. And let's assume it's Kemi Badenoch, and I think she should get a pair of killer heels.
Wow.
She'll wear them well.
No, you'll say Max will be jealous now, given his love for Theresa May's heels.
If Kemi Badenoch succeeds Keir Starmer, I will wear a pair of killer heels into
right, let's clip this.
However, given that we think it's probably going to be Andy Burnham who's the king of the North, I imagine Keir Starmer should welcome him with a plate of chips and gravy, the North's finest food. And I think there ought to be an exchange of tickets for the Eurostar to fix our trading relationship with Europe.
Oh, he can't resist it, can he? Thank you all very much indeed. Really good episode of Cross Question tonight. We'll possibly have an even better one tomorrow. You never know. Labour MP Dame Siobhan McDonnell will be with us, businesswoman Emma Sinclair, former Tory advisor Samuel Kasumu, and the political journalist turned Labour councillor Sebastian Salak. Now, I am 6'2" tall, but I only have 31-inch legs. So when I saw this story about leg lengthening surgery, my ears pricked up. But Max, really, there are huge risks apparently associated with leg lengthening. I didn't even know it was a thing until today. But people are going to Turkey and spending £25,000 and then coming back and getting the NHS to put things right. Have you ever decided that a part of your body, be careful here, Max, a part of your body needs cosmetic changing, shall we say? Have you ever done it?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the National Police Chiefs counsels to review the language in its anti-racism guidance. It's after teenage student Henry Novak lay dying in handcuffs after his murderer falsely accused him of a racist attack. The Hampshire force denies claims by Nigel Farage of two-tier policing. Mayor of London Sir Sadiq Khan told the State of London debate on LBC News, people are using the murder as an opportunity to further their own political agenda.
The thesis they have goes, the pendulum has swung too far the other way. And all I'd say gently in response to that is Dame Louise Casey, who's an impartial, independent person, went into the Met Police Service and found, in her words, not mine, the Met Police Service was institutionally racist, institutionally homophobic, and institutionally misogynistic.
Karen Geddes, the first black female superintendent in West Midlands Police, told LBC all the factors in the police response should be considered.
Was the race aspect a factor? Was there issues around the lack of situational awareness from the officer when he asked for help, that he couldn't breathe? Was there issues around training and lack of experience as well? So for me, there's a wider context here that needs to be discussed.
The head of the Royal Navy thanked search and rescue teams after 3 of his personnel were killed in a helicopter training exercise. The Merlin craft came down near the A30 dual carriageway through Devon this morning. A YouTuber who murdered his pregnant girlfriend in County Armagh has been jailed for at least 31 years. 36-year-old Stephen McCullough concocted an alibi that he'd been live streaming when Natalie McNally was killed in 2022. The US president threatening to impose further import tariffs of up to 12.5% on goods from 60 countries, including the UK. Donald Trump wants to target nations America's accused of not doing enough to stop imports of products made using forced labour. And Europe's first universal theme park will get £1.3 billion of taxpayer support. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves made the announcement while visiting the 500-acre site.
As well as the direct work here at the park, obviously the government are investing in the upgrades to the railway, upgrades as well to the roads. So this is going to be creating plenty of jobs here in Bedfordshire and beyond.
The attraction's due to open in 2031. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 41 points at 10,332. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.16. LBC weather, more blustery showers tonight, some clear spells in the east, a low of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:05 on LBC. I sit here with a slight sense of trepidation, thinking, imagine if nobody calls in on this hour. How am I going to pad out an hour on leg lengthening? So I'm going to widen it out from leg lengthening, but that is the reason that we're talking about effectively cosmetic surgery. It's a bit more than cosmetic surgery, isn't it? I mean, it never occurred to me that you could actually get your legs lengthened. And as I said in my talk-up, I've got a long back and short legs, but I'm 6'2". I would quite happily rebalance my torso and legs, I suppose, if it could be done very easily and at zero cost. But of course it can't. And there is no way on this earth that I would ever consider this kind of surgery, or indeed any surgery. Back in, 2011, 2012, just after I joined LBC, my former colleague Christo got a hair transplant. And I was then contacted by, I think, the same company saying, would I like a hair transplant? I did have a bit of hair in those days. It's all disappeared now, as you can see if you're watching on Global Player, the LBC app or the LBC YouTube channel. And so if I could change anything about my appearance, it would be I'd love to have hair back. Because I used to have a fairly luxuriant head of hair back in my 20s and 30s. But it's all gone now. So if I could have it back and make it look completely natural, then fine, I would. But it's very rare that you see anyone who's had a hair transplant that you can't tell they've had a hair transplant. So I think, well, what's the point of it? I think Wayne Rooney, when he first had his, it looked fairly natural. Not so much now. But there are all sorts of procedures that you can have nowadays. And I don't know why it is that Turkey has become the destination for these. I think there's one or two South American countries. I think Bolivia does this sort of thing as well. But I mean, Katie Price has almost made a career out of it, going to Turkey to have a sort of, I think we covered this some time ago, Brazilian butt lifts. Don't ask me what they are. I'm sure I knew at the time that we were talking about them, but I can't remember. All sorts of facial surgery, sort of nose jobs, higher cheekbones, all that sort of thing. People are spending thousands of pounds doing this. And I want to know from you, have you done this? What sort of arguments with yourself, your friends and your family did you go through before you decided to do whatever it was that you had done? And did it work? And what if it didn't work? Because, I mean, that must be the ultimate nightmare. You go to a foreign country to have a procedure done and it doesn't work. And then the NHS is expected to bail you out for it. Well, patients are flying abroad for leg lengthening surgery, then relying on the NHS to sort out what are called serious complications. This is the group of surgeons has warned about this. Experts said that social media had fueled a desire to become taller, leading to soaring demand for the procedures, which involve sawing the leg bone in two, oh my God, then inserting a limb lengthening device so that people can grow by several inches. The surgery usually costs about £100,000 at clinics in the UK, but in Turkey, clinics typically offer the procedure for around £25,000. The operation is extremely high risk, no kidding, and can cause nerve damage, disability, blood clots, and infections, while some patients end up with one leg longer than the other. Well, a new study published by the Annals of the Royal College of Surgeons of England warned of a recent increase in patients presenting for rehabilitation and treatment of complications following limb lengthening. They examined the cases of 4 men and 3 women who went abroad for leg lengthening surgery in the past 5 years. 5 had travelled to Turkey, 1 to Russia, and 1 to South Africa. 6 said they wished to be taller to improve their feeling of well-being and quality of life, while 1 went to Russia to correct a congenital lower limb deficiency. The patients typically needed 10 NHS hospital appointments. All required physiotherapy, and some needed extensive follow-up care. Sorting out complications cost £36,000. Well, 2 patients required major surgery for complications, including knee surgery and removal of broken nails holding bones together, with re-nailing for poor bone regeneration. Patients said they had decided to go abroad mostly due to cheaper costs and the availability of the surgery. Well, the experts said the desire to become taller is gaining popularity, driven by the internet, social media and advertising, and affordable treatment based around the world. Well, the number of patients flying abroad for surgery has soared in recent years, from 230,000 in 2021 to more than 430,000 only 2 years later. The team said the reasons for medical tourism include social media advertising and low airfares, which produces a very appealing concept of surgery combined with a holiday. So 2023, 430,000 of you went abroad for this sort of medical procedure, not necessarily leg lengthening, but some sort of cosmetic-related procedure to essentially boost your own self-confidence and make you look better. I wonder what percentage of these 430,000 people came back and thought, well, that was money well spent. Love to hear your stories. 0345 6060 973. And a special prize for anybody who wants to tell me that they have had their legs lengthened. Paul Nesbitt joins me now, consultant trauma and limb reconstruction surgeon who's based at Manchester Royal Infirmary. Paul, very good evening. As I say, I'd never heard of this procedure. It sounds a horrendous thing to do, but clearly people think the results will be worth it.
We've had a number of patients present to us at Manchester, and certainly people's desire to be 2, 3 or even 4 inches taller seems to be worth the risk to them. We've had many patients travel to Turkey. We've had patients from Pakistan as well. And the patients, unfortunately, that end up in our beds all come in with complications. I would say the very least are in our hospital beds for around a month.
Wow. So it's costing the NHS a lot of money.
Indeed. Yeah, I think the recent article in the Telegraph quoted around £36,000, and I would dare say that that's probably right. I would suspect it's perhaps a little bit more as well by the time the outpatient clinics are finished.
Because the natural response, I suspect from some of my listeners, would be to say, well, why should the NHS pay for this? It's ridiculous. Like they shouldn't accept these patients. But what do you do if someone turns up at your A&E and they present with problems related to cosmetic reconstruction or whatever? You can't turn them away, can you?
No, the complications from these procedures, if they do go wrong, are catastrophic and they are limb-threatening. So turning these patients away isn't really a choice. And I think it would be unfair to ask the A&E doctors and surgeons to turn these patients away at the door and condemn them perhaps to an amputation.
Do they generally express regret for even considering the surgery, let alone having it?
It's a spectrum, as you might expect. Some people, I think, are rather embarrassed about what's happened to them and the situation they've ended up in, and others just wish to succeed at being taller at all costs. It's a spectrum of people, and overall, I think most of them are very, very keen to keep their legs at the same length, even if it might be easier to treat them by reshortening them again.
Why do people want to be taller? Because I mean, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask this, being 6'2", and I've never regretted being tall. But I don't remember or recall any friends of mine who are sort of like under 5'5", for example, ever expressing the desire that, the one thing they really wish is that they could be as tall as me.
So these procedures were invented for patients with short limbs after trauma, but I think the main reason for most of them is they feel that being taller will enhance them socially. I think social media has a large impact on that, and most of them would like, most men especially seem to see 6 foot as a goal. And most of the men I've treated, I mean, I'm 5'11". I've seen patients.
You're nearly there, Paul. You're nearly there. Don't worry too much.
I've seen patients who have come back and they are taller than me when they started, and they wish to be 6'3" or 6'4". It's a range and a spectrum of people, but for most, I think they believe that being taller will help them socially, and help them get along in life.
Do you think dating apps are to blame here, because people are asked to list their heights on these platforms, and some people become quite obsessive about finding a partner of a certain height, but I mean, before anything else, that is their main goal?
It could be. I think social media and I sort of encase dating apps within that has had an impact, especially on younger people. And cosmesis, height, it is a big thing, especially in today's day and age where most people communicate in pictures. It's a very visual thing, and therefore being taller, I think they see that as being better.
Is it a male thing?
No, we've had an even split of males and females. It's definitely not just men.
And what other cosmetic procedures tend to go wrong most?
I mean, I'm a limb reconstruction and trauma surgeon by trade, but we've all seen the horror stories of what we would say is more traditional cosmetic surgery. So, breast augmentation, Brazilian butt lifts. We've all seen the disaster stories from them. But from my point of view, this is the limb lengthening is the main problem, I would say, in my department.
It's really odd, isn't it, that so many people seem very dissatisfied with the way that they look, effectively the way that they're made. But I suppose, I mean, at the minimal end of this, I suppose that's why women wear makeup, because they want to enhance the way that they look. Well, not just women sometimes. And then you've got right at the other extreme, you've got leg lengthening and Brazilian butt lifts. But they do seem to be becoming more popular, don't they? Is there, apart from vanity, is there any other reason for it?
We do have patients that have psychological problems, and that's certainly an element there. We've also had people wish to be shorter because they want to work on an aeroplane, for example, and they're too tall. So I've had that request as well, not just lengthening, but can I be shorter? But in the main, I genuinely feel that it's social media and the kind of industry surrounding that drives this, and the perception that being taller will make you more attractive and will make you more socially accessible to other people.
Paul, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. That's Paul Nesbitt, consultant trauma and limb reconstruction surgeon at Manchester Royal Infirmary. Right, I want to hear your stories here. Maybe I'll answer this question. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. I can't remember who said that, but it is so true, isn't it? And we live in a society now where vanity seems to be everything. Any kind of imperfection in our appearance, we want to change. We want to enhance our appearance in all sorts of different ways. We regard losing weight as automatically making us look better, fitter, more attractive to other people. Have we got to an extreme of this now, where it really is all about vanity? It is all about self-worth. And I'm not diminishing the whole concept of self-worth, because I think if we feel good about ourselves, we probably are better at what we're doing in the workplace. We're probably happier people. But can you really solve self-worth issues by not just sort of the normal cosmetic surgery that people go in for, and this is men and women, but taking things to extremes like lengthening your limbs? I mean, that really is something which I would say is right at the extreme end. And as I say, I didn't even know it existed until today. And what happens when these procedures do go wrong? I mean, Katie Price is an example of somebody who's been very open about some of the procedures that she's done. I mean, she almost seems addicted to having some sort of cosmetic enhancement every year, whether it's on her boobs, whether it's on her bum, whether it's on her face. Now, I'll be honest and say that I can't think of anybody, a celebrity, or indeed anyone I know, whose looks have been enhanced by having cosmetic surgery. What happens if those procedures go wrong? Do you think it is the NHS's responsibility to come to people's aid and fix it? Because I don't know what percentage of 430,000 people each year, what percentage of the operations go wrong. But I mean, even if it's 10%, that's 45,000 times 36,000. I can't do that sum in my head. So let's go to a break and I'll do it while you listen to some adverts. It's 9:20.
This is LBC.
Is your cat drinking enough? Discover Purina One Hydrolife and help support their daily hydration with a taste they'll enjoy. Purina One Hydrolife. Make it easy.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
Check your retirement savings are on track with PensionBee's easy-to-use app. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Hey Sainsbury's, any way you can save me a few quid on my weekly shop?
Well, Jane, try Your Nectar prices. Every week in Your Nectar app, you can unlock up to 10 personalised discounts on things you love at Sainsbury's. A Janesbury's, if you will.
Sounds like my kind of place.
Get personalised discounts with Your Nectar prices. That's good food for all of us. Sainsbury's. 18 plus Nectar app required. Unlock up to 10 Your Nectar prices weekly. Available in supermarkets, online and in locals with Smart Shop. T&Cs apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
21 minutes past 9 on LBC. We're talking about cosmetic reconstruction. We're talking about people who want to lengthen their legs or maybe even shorten their legs. I suppose that happens too. I mean, what is the weirdest part? No, I'm going to invite some. No, should I even say this? I don't want calls going on about sort of the nether regions. I really don't. But I mean, what's the weirdest part of the body that a friend of yours has ever had, sort of had an operation on to improve its look or no, let's not go there. 0345 6060 973. Simon's in Saffron Walden. Hello, Simon.
Yes, hi, Ian.
Hello. What would you like to say?
Well, it triggered memories for me because I've had my leg lengthened 3 times. I thought you might be interested to hear that.
Yes.
Not for cosmetic reasons. It was addressing postnatal infection contracted in hospital. So it was a necessity, and this is going back to the 80s and 90s when I think it was quite pioneering treatment. And it's not something I recommend doing lightly, especially for sort of cosmetic reasons alone. It's a highly traumatic process. Whereas no doubt sort of technology is sort of advanced and it looks a bit different to 30 or 40 years ago. The principle behind it is that, as you said earlier, your leg is broken in half, and then these days I think they insert some sort of device which then lengthens the leg on a screw from within the bone. But in my day, you had pins sticking out sort of through the bone and sticking out of your leg, joined to an external fixator, which you would then turn the screw 4 times a day, and your leg would lengthen by 1 millimetre a day until it created a gap which new bone would grow back into, and hey presto, you had a longer leg. It took about a year each time, and I suppose the thing that people might not think about is that it's not just your bone that goes with that, it's all the skin, muscles, the tendons and the ligaments, so it can be very painful.
So just tell me again why this happened.
In my case, there was I was a baby in the maternity ward. There was an infection which destroyed sort of my right pelvis and my right femur, and each bone has a number of growth plates which ultimately determine how tall you're going to grow and how long a bone will grow. And one of the 3 growth plates in my femur was destroyed by this infection. So,
God, how awful.
You can imagine as I started to grow, put simply, my right leg grew more slowly than my left leg. So, that brings all sorts of other issues.
So this was more or less 30 years ago. So what?
It's sad to say. I think it's nearly 40 years ago. Yeah, it's mid-80s, between the mid-80s and the mid-90s. Yeah.
So it's not something you have to have sort of updated at all. It just, they do it and it either works or it doesn't.
Yes. And, how much extra length you get, I suppose, would be determined ultimately by, how much pain you can bear and how smoothly things go around the edges. But it's there were people who, having the same treatment, who had growth, were desperate for I think, extra height because they were, they had real sort of growth issues, often congenital sort of issues, and I wouldn't really call that cosmetic. I mean, that was clearly a great benefit.
No, but I mean, you clearly you didn't really have much choice here. You had to have this done. But can you understand why people would choose to have it done?
No, I suppose there's this psychological aspect where people may want to, but I suppose it's not for me to say whether people should choose to or not, but they should think very carefully about this one because it's a really very traumatic and painful process.
Well, it sounds it. Simon, thank you very much indeed for telling us your story. Well, Simon clearly had to have it done. There was no question there. Luckily, it worked. But why would anyone choose to basically have their legs sawn in half and then put back together just to gain an inch or two in height? Why can't we be satisfied with how we were brought into? I was about to say how God made us, but I don't believe in God. But you know what I mean. Why can't we be satisfied with our lot in life? And we just seem obsessed nowadays. And I think the internet has a lot of questions to answer here. We are encouraged to improve, in inverted commas, ourselves. But if you've had any kind of surgery done, whether it's voluntary or not, do you feel that it's actually done the trick, that your sense of self-worth justifies, the expense and justifies the pain? Grace is in Ealing. Hello, Grace.
Hi. Well, as balmy as I know it sounds, I do believe that God made us. I think that biology indicates that we have a designer. But nevertheless, though I really believe it doesn't matter how one appears, still I have been plagued by just really dumb, irrational thoughts about my appearance since I was about 12. I was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder when teachers sent me to a psychiatrist because teachers thought it was very odd that I couldn't bear to take off my makeup without breaking down in tears, which was odd because I was otherwise very compliant as a pupil. And then shortly after that, I developed an eating disorder, which I've kind of had ever since, although it's not as severe as it was at one point when I was sectioned. And along the way, I tried a couple of these silly procedures that you can get now that are supposed to, for example, freeze fat cells. So it's not major surgery, but it's a thing that, you can have done relatively cheaply. Even though I didn't really have many fat cells because of my eating disorder, the clinicians aren't going to pass up the opportunity to make some money off of you. That's not to slander all clinicians, obviously, but there's this strong feeling in the back of my mind all of the time that it's not okay to not be very, very thin. And there are all sorts of things about my face and other things that I can't get out of my brain. And it's really, really balmy. And I'm so frustrated with myself for it because, I like I say, I really believe that it doesn't matter. But were it not the case that one could end up being a burden on the NHS if surgery were to go wrong, and it were not the case that surgery costs a lot of money, I would absolutely have various kinds of cosmetic surgery because I'm so frustrated with aspects of my appearance. The particular thing that stops me is, like I said, the concerns for the NHS, but also I'm so conscious that there are people in our world who really need surgery because they've got, for instance, tumours growing out of the sides of their necks, the size of tennis balls, or limbs with various issues, and they can't get surgery because they don't have an NHS. So I think to myself, well, I shouldn't spend money on my appearance when I could donate towards helping those people, and they could be helped much more cost effectively than I have here. Even though you're not happy with your appearance, does the logical part of your brain then kick in and think, well, actually, even though I don't feel happy all of the time with it, I know that actually that this isn't as serious as I sometimes convince myself it is? To some extent, but in the same way that a person with OCD might have thoughts that pop into their mind, even if they don't really believe that they need to keep on carrying out a particular ritual, it can be very difficult to eradicate some particular thoughts from your brain if you have that neural pathway. If you develop an eating disorder, then it becomes even more entrenched because of the physiology of eating disorders. And if you've had particular experiences in school, then something might become particularly particularly entrenched. One thing that's occurred to me is that as a child, I would often see Disney videos, and in Disney, but also in some other media that is shown to kids, the villains will often have certain appearances and the heroes or heroines will have other appearances. And so it's as though in our really formative years, we're kind of giving the subliminal message to children that good people look like this and bad people look like that. And it makes no sense, but it's in quite a lot of media. And I'm thinking of Roald Dahl books and things, it's kind of like, is it the twits look ugly and things like that?
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm thinking back to reading The Magic Faraway Tree and then going to see the film a couple of months ago. And I mean, the film is a bit of a sanitised version, but you're right. In a lot of children's novels back in the day, and Enid Blyton, I think, was a prime example of this, where the bad characters are always sort of horrible and ugly, and the good characters look like Prince Charming or whatever.
Yeah. And I wonder to what extent that can slightly shape our brains when we're kind of just learning about the world for the first time when we're really small. And my understanding of it, I've not delved into it in much detail, is that in some civilizations prior to our kind of Judeo-Christian worldview, the ancient Greeks, for example, some of them did believe that an attractive person was morally better. So it has been a thing in parts of humanity that some people have really thought that there is an association between appearance and moral virtue. And so to kind of get rid of these really irrational thoughts can be quite difficult. And I'm very frustrated with myself that I'm not managing to be completely logical, because I know that appearance doesn't matter, yet I can't get rid of this concern that I ought to be thinner and things like that. And it's very frustrating how the brain could be, not aligning with what you really believe to be true.
Yes, but at least you recognise that, whereas I think there are a lot of people who don't recognise that. So you're kind of halfway there, Grace. Thank you very much indeed. Right, lots more calls to come, I hope. 0345 6060 973. And also lots of texts coming in on this too. It's 9:33. News headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Hampshire's Chief Constable has denied two-tier policing's in operation after the murder of student Henry Novak. The 18-year-old lay dying in handcuffs in Southampton in December after his Sikh killer falsely accused him of a racist attack. 3 people have died after a Royal Navy helicopter crashed in a field in Devon. The Ministry of Defence says it happened during a training exercise this morning. And £1.3 billion of taxpayer cash will go into Universal's new UK theme park in Bedfordshire. The Chancellor toured the site today, with construction due to begin soon. LBC weather, more blustery showers tonight, some clear spells in the east, a low of 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when 3 for £12 on a range of mix and match summer barbecue meant not only was the get-together a hit, but lunch the next day and the day after that. Make it a summer to remember with 3 for £12 on our delicious barbecue range, including citrus herby halloumi kebabs, smoky king prawns with a punchy Creole sauce, and juicy British oak smoked beef burgers. Available now at Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices may vary in Channel Islands, Little Waitrose and partners and concessions.
McDonald's breakfast is turning up the heat with a spicy new twist. Calm down, not that spicy. Breakfast is for savouring, not suffering. Introducing McDonald's breakfast with Frank's Red Hot Ketchup. A spicy breakfast, suitable for the morning. Until 8th of June, served until 11 a.m, subject to availability.
3 heroes, 1 mission, to hijack snacks. Introducing new corn protein bites.
Wait, are we the heroes?
Of course we're the heroes. These snacks are high in protein and ready to eat.
Why are you doing the serious voice?
Yeah, why are you doing the serious voice? I was trying to make it cooler. Find new corn protein bite snack bags in supermarkets nationwide. Corn, so tasty. Why choose the alternative?
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:35 on LBC. Oliver says, Ian, I think your face now suits the no hair look. Thank you, Oliver. Where you're lacking, I can see where this is going, if you don't mind me saying, I think I might, is in the rear. You're 6'2", but your bottom is not quite the pert peach I'm sure it once was. you should consider treating yourself to a Brazilian butt lift. I'm looking. Oh no, they're all nodding through the gallery. Oh no, Chris isn't quite sure about that. I've always thought I had quite a nice. No. Anyway, let's go to Lawrence in Wembley. Hello, Lawrence.
Yeah, good evening, Ian. In my 20s, 23, I had a rhinoplasty.
A what?
Well, it was a nose job, actually.
Right, okay.
Called a rhino. The reason I had it, because I had a Roman nose.
Yeah.
And, calling me things like beaky, and the last thing I remember, a girl made sort of a remark with a hand or finger in a nightclub, so I decided to do something about it. Yeah.
And what did you do?
Well, I had a nose job.
Well, why did you have it done? Did you pay for it privately or on the NHS?
No, I went private, and it was also at the time where celebrities like Tom Jones, Cilla Black, with also, it was a status symbol for them, as well. No, I had it privately, the London clinic, so it wasn't on the NHS, yeah. So,
and can I ask how much it cost?
Yeah, it was the best thing that I could have done, really. I think it changed my life, really.
And what comments did you get from friends and family?
I think my mother wasn't keen, because a mother really sees a son as perfect, yeah? So, but, no, I mean, it was my decision. And it was the best decision that I ever made. And also it gives you confidence as well, yeah?
What was one of the reasons? Because people sort of made horrible comments about your nose.
Yeah.
Because I think that I remember at school, my secondary school, there was a girl, I won't name her, but she basically didn't have a neck. And you know what children can be like. She got absolutely horrible things said to her.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, if there was an operation available where she could have had, I mean, I don't even know if this is possible, but if it was possible, you could quite understand why someone in her position would think, well, actually, I would quite like to look like everyone else, and it will stop all of this horrible abuse that I get.
There is another reason why I had it in, because I'm Jewish, and obviously there was, association with a particular type of nose.
Mm.
Yeah, so you would also get some comments, yeah?
Which, I mean, that they're probably more hurtful than just a sort of ordinary insult, aren't they?
Well, it was both. It was both. But I decided that if I did it, then it would put me in a better position so that you could find out if somebody was genuine or not. Because a lot of people that I thought were my friends, even in latter days, when they were making anti-Semitic of my persuasion. So you could find out about somebody, yeah?
And how long ago was this that you had it done?
23, I'm 75.
Oh, that was quite a long time ago then.
10th of June, I'll be 75, yeah.
So you're about...
I was 23, 24, yeah.
So you've more than 50 years ago.
And not only that, I was working in the jewellers, and the owner of the jewellers, he had his nose changed, and I was always sort of looking at that and thinking, oh, I wish I could look like that, yeah. And I looked at Tom Jones when he had a nose job, and Cilla Black, and so you sort of think, it was it was sort of,
I mean, that may be part of the reason why so many people are having things done nowadays, because they see a celebrity have it done and think, well, I'll have a bit of that as well. But it is, in the end, it is all about, I was going to say it's all about vanity. I mean, in your case, could you say it was all about vanity or not? Or would that be an exaggeration?
It was probably a mixture, but not the main reason. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that vanity is not a valid reason to have it done. If it impacts on your self-worth or your lack of self-worth, if you don't have it done, then obviously more people will have it done. Thank you very much indeed, Lawrence. 1.6 billion. I mean, that is what around the figure that it's costing the NHS every year to have things put right that go wrong. That's a calculation I've done. If you've found any other calculations, let me know. Dave says, ugly people, brackets me, are treated appallingly by society. It's a disability. Immediate discrimination, low self-esteem, underachievement, lower salary. But the thing is, Dave, I mean, okay, if you are, by conventional standards, hideously ugly and you've got some sort of issue, then I hear what you're saying. But the thing is that a lot of people who consider themselves ugly are not ugly at all. And there are lots of people out there who would absolutely welcome a relationship with you. It's just finding the right person. Because we all sort of see these, mainly people in the public eye, particularly actors, who sort of men who have chiseled jaws and women who have perfect bodies. Most people aren't like that. And most people recognise that they're never going to have the body beautiful or have the most beautiful face. That doesn't preclude you from being happy, and it doesn't preclude you from having a happy relationship. You just have to find the right person. Right, let's take a couple more texts before we go to a break. This is from Rebecca. I'm a 5'10", 33-year-old woman and struggle on the dating scene, as I'm constantly told by men I'm too tall, so would like to be shorter. I wonder how typical that is. I mean, I know quite a few women who are either 5'10" or several over 6 feet tall. And I completely understand that it's unusual for a tall woman to be going out with a shorter man. You sort of almost do a double take in the street if you see sort of two people holding hands and the woman is like 6 inches taller than the man. It is unusual. But so what? Doesn't make it wrong. Surely, in the end, it's a person that you want to go out with, the person that you get on well with, the person that you love. I mean, height shouldn't really have anything to do with it, should it? It's a bit similar to body weight. I mean, often you find rake-thin men going out with, shall we say, women who are quite corpulent. Now, again, that is not the norm, I suppose, but there's nothing wrong with it. It works for them. So why should people judge? But we do judge. That's the problem, isn't it? In this whole sphere, we're all judging other people by appearance. And you know the old maxim that you make up your mind about someone within 10 seconds of meeting them. And that is because you're judging them primarily on what they look like. Shouldn't be like that, should it? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Do you worry about the cost of the NHS? 1.6 billion a year, I've calculated, for operations that are carried out abroad and then have to be rectified when people come back to this country. We started off by talking about leg lengthening, but there are all sorts of other procedures that people have indulged with. Have you had one that is considered by people to be a bit odd, a bit weird? 0345 6060 973. It's 9:45.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
At 11, who's the best and worst boss that you've had? But first, as politicians row over the murder of Henry Novak, has your view changed after Prime Minister's questions today?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Get iPhone 17 in the Vodafone Business Summer Sale. iPhone 17 is built for business with all-day battery life and the powerful A19 chip for fast, efficient performance. Experience it all on the best network for business and save £300. Hurry, offer ends the 22nd of July. Vodafone Business.
Businesses with up to 9 employees only. Based on iPhone 17 and 24-month unlimited airtime plan. Best network is awarded at the Mobile Industry Awards. Saving calculated over 36 months.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Shots from halfway causing goalkeeping howlers. Roofs badly leaking from sudden rain showers. Saturday hackers and onion sizzling. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing yet not winning. When your bet's gone bad. We simply remember our favourite things and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+GambleAware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
9:48. Helen's in Swansea. Hello, Helen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Lovely to
very
speak
well,
with
thank you. What would you like to say?
Well, I've got quite large breasts, and I've decided to go for a breast reduction operation next year. I've been thinking about it for about 10 years, so it's a very, very considered decision. I've chosen my surgeon as well. He's a local breast cancer specialist who specialises in reconstructive surgery as well, and he works privately. And he's got a great reputation. I've checked him out. But yeah, as I said, I've thought about this for 10 years. It's a really considered decision, but it's really difficult to find clothes that fit me properly. I have to go up 2 sizes. I can't look at myself in the mirror. And I just hate passing shop windows and catching a glimpse of myself. And I've been the butt of sort of quite lewd jokes by men and some women as well. So I've just decided, this is the year where next year is the year that I do something about it. It's expensive, but for me, it's going to be worth it.
Do you mind telling us roughly in the ballpark of how much it costs? I
think it's in the region of about £10,000. So it's a lot of money. It's so much money.
And you can't do it on the NHS?
You can, but I think it's difficult, and I don't think I would quite qualify. And I think the NHS, the resources are so very, very precious. And I haven't got a lot of money, but I've got enough to have been able to put some money aside for this. There are other services who need this money significantly more than I do. So I think it's something that I am willing to pay for myself.
So is it primarily an issue of self-worth?
I think it is, yes. Yes, it is. Yes, I want to feel good about myself. I'm 60 this year, so I want to go into my 60s feeling that, and I don't think I'm going to look at myself in the mirror and think, wow, I'm perfect. Not by any means. I'm not saying that at all. But just so that I can buy clothes that fit, and I can just feel better about myself, really. So yeah, it is about self-worth. Yes, it is.
And you're doing it in this country?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, as I said, it's he's a local breast cancer lead who also does work privately as well. So he's my chosen surgeon. Sorry.
And what are the risks here? Because I mean that's the thing that would really make me think twice or three times about doing anything like you're planning to do, because there must be risks associated with it.
I think the risks are quite significant, yes. I mean, I think infection is one of the biggest risks. And I think there are other sort of risks around nipple sensitivity and that kind of thing as well, and the loss of sensitivity. So I think those are the two primary risks. But I'm willing to, and the pain, obviously, I think it's an extremely painful operation, and I think you're bound for quite some time. And I think you have to wear a special bra for some time, quite some time as well. And there's scarring. I think the scarring is quite significant for a while, but again, it's something that I'm willing to face, really. And as I said, I've thought about this for 10 years. It's not something that I've thought of on a whim, but it's something that I think I would like to do for myself and for my own self-confidence and self-worth.
Well, I've just had a text from somebody who's got the opposite problem to you, from Jane, who says, I got my boobies done in 2016 because I couldn't get anything other than a child's bra just to get me into proportion with my hips. So, I mean, done for exactly the same reason as you, but obviously a very different problem. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have thought about that, but there's also there's a lifting aspect to this. It's a reduction and a lift, because large breasts do defy gravity somewhat. So, but yes, yeah. Well, a friend of mine many years ago, I sort of had a brief conversation about this because she has got very large breasts, and I sort of gently broached the subject as, have you ever considered it? She was absolutely horrified that I'd even asked her. Yes.
Well, it is a huge undertaking. As I said, I've really, really thought about this. This isn't done on a whim. And I read about it, and I think Sally Hughes, she's a journalist for The Guardian. I think she charted her progress in having a breast reduction, and that's helped me make my decision as well. And talking to other women and reading about other women who've gone through the same process, and I think the majority have said that it's been worth it. So yeah.
Well, Helen, the best of luck. I hope it goes really, really well. And thank you very much for telling us your story. Right, let's read this one out. It's from Dee in Norfolk. It's quite upsetting and infuriating to know that totally deaf adults only get one implant, children get two, and to have the hearing in the other ear, we personally have to pay over £20,000, which the NHS supposedly can't afford. Yet that money is being spent on corrective surgery for people who have had procedures for cosmetic reasons abroad, which they paid for. They should pay, or the NHS should claim from the other country to cover the cost. What is wrong with this country, says Dee. Well, we haven't got time to answer that one in the 6 minutes that remain on the programme, but we have got time to talk to Eric in Glasgow. Eric, hi.
Ian, hi. Good evening, sir. How are you, pal?
I'm terribly well. What would you like to tell us?
That's marvellous show. Right, start off with, my bathroom consists of a toothbrush, a razor blade, and something to wash myself with, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Now, majority of my friends, you walk into their bathrooms and it's like walking into something at an airport. Right. No, seriously.
What? So you don't have deodorant, you don't have aftershave, you don't have Nivea for men?
No, there'll be maybe a bottle of deodorant kicking about, but that's about it, pal. I mean, and you know, and I've got a lovely boyfriend who is the exact same as me. He's very down to earth, and we don't have anything to cure our feet. We don't have anything to cure our nails or anything like that about the house. We just go on with it, and it's helped us a lot. But our friends are that vain that they have to have all these lotions, and they cost a fortune, Ian. They cost a lot of money.
Yeah, well, you're right, but I mean, I mean, I don't think I go over the top in sort of body care, but I do have an aftershave, which, I mean, that's not cheap. And I do use Nivea for men. That's why I've got such wonderful skin.
Okay. Do you actually have anything to do with hair products? That's a big thing these days.
Well, I don't have any hair.
Hair products. I'm not talking. I'm just talking about general and hair in general. You know, with your legs and anything like that. There's that many products out for your body. It's unbelievable now. You know, it's really getting to the stage where you think, by God, my friend spent £800 last month on body products.
What?
800 quid.
Well, they need to give their head a wobble. I mean, that's obscene.
Beauty and fashion is a big thing.
It absolutely is. But I mean, what on earth do they spend that money on?
It's all your products for your skin, your nails, everything to do with your body. I mean, I go to the dentist twice a year. I'll buy a packet of toothpaste that'll last me a month if I use it correctly. Use minimum. I'll only buy stuff like Colgate or something, you know.
So do I.
Whatever, stuff like that. I don't go over the top with my teeth. But more importantly, Ian, I think it's down to people that walk past the windows and look at themselves. It's about people are getting too vain. Harden up a little bit and it'll make your life better. Stay away from social media and don't be too paranoid, and it will help you. And I think if you keep active, it helps you a lot, pal.
Well, just as a tip, I do think you ought to have a deodorant, Eric. I mean, I can't smell you from here, but there's a lot of me that doesn't really want to. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Kevin says, haven't we always tried to improve our appearances? The clothes we wear, the haircuts we have, going on diets, getting a suntan, going to the gym, getting weight loss drugs from the NHS. As cosmetic surgery is getting cheaper, it's become more affordable to a larger number of people. Well, that is absolutely true. Anastasia says, what aftershave do you use? That's a very personal question. I use Aqua di Gio. Which I wanted to call, when we got a new Jack Russell in about 30 years ago, I wanted to call him Rio after Rio Ferdinand. And my partner refused because he hates football. And we ended up calling him Gio after my aftershave. So my aftershave then became known as Gio. No, I can't say that. I'll say Gio's Wee. What a lovely way to end the programme. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7 with more tales about my aftershave. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur, but right now...